Chapter 836. Su Yen expressed his condolences, but in reality, the surrounding monks from Subodhi Monastery were only chanting the name of Buddha. They did not feel any sadness at all. At the sight of this, Su Yen frowned slightly. To be honest, he did not really like dealing with the monks from Subodhi Monastery. The people of the pugilistic world said that the monks from the Great Light Temple were radical and paranoid. That was because the ascetic monks from Subodhi Monastery rarely left the southern wilderness. If they interacted more, they would realize that the monks from Subodhi Monastery were simply impossible to communicate with. At that moment, a gentle voice came from behind Su Yen. "Master Su Yen, please don't take offense. Uncle Master Jingchan Jizang was one of the oldest monks of the Subodhi Monastery. Now that he's gone, although we are grieving, we can only chant sutras for him. We wish for Uncle Master to reach paradise soon. The world is a sea of bitterness, and there are many ups and downs. Although martial Uncle Jingchan Jizang has passed, he is also free." Su Yen turned his head and saw a young monk walking over. His appearance was unbelievably young, as if he was only in his early 20s. He had red lips, white teeth, and a handsome appearance. He wore a dragon-patterned kasaya, and his entire body seemed to be enveloped in a layer of hazy Buddhist light. Su Yen hurriedly put his palms together and bowed. "Greetings, Abbot Rama." The seemingly young monk in front of him was the current abbot of Subodhi Monastery, Divine Monk Rama. He was known as a living legend. It was said that when he was born, auspicious clouds and Buddhist light descended. It could be seen clearly from hundreds of miles away. Therefore, he was personally adopted by the previous abbot of Subodhi Monastery. At the age of 3, he could recite scriptures. At the age of 7, he discussed Buddhism with the monks in the monastery. At the age of 13, he traveled the southern wilderness and saved people from suffering. He was even worshipped by some of the natives in the southern wilderness and became a godlike existence. After experiencing thousands of tribulations, he took over the position of abbot of Subodhi Monastery at the age of 30. He had entered the arcane enlightenment realm earlier than his senior brother, Su Ci. Although he was very young and was not even as old as Su Yen, he was a supreme figure who could dominate the pugilistic world. Rama pressed his palms together and nodded. "Thank you, Master Void Words, for traveling so far to bring back Uncle Master Jingchan's relics. This penniless monk will arrange a residence for you. You can rest in the temple for a few days before leaving." Su Yen hurriedly said, "Abbot, you're being too polite. You and I both belong to the Buddhist lineage. This small matter is nothing. The Temple of Great Light has many matters to attend to, so I shall not disturb you any further." Although there was no conflict between the Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery, Su Yen still felt a little awkward letting him stay here. Since Su Yen said this, Rama did not stop him. He only personally sent Su Yen to the door before leaving. After returning to the monastery, Rama picked up the 7 treasures glazed cane that had lost its spirituality. He gently caressed the saber marks on it and closed his eyes. He sighed and said, "I only wanted to enter seclusion for a period of time while the mountain was sealed." Why did Uncle Master Jingchan Jizang go? Uncle Master has not left the temple for more than 10 years. Why is he going to the northern Yen this time? Can any of you give me an explanation? Rama's voice was very soft and indifferent, as if he was discussing something. However, all the monks present, regardless of whether they were older or younger than Rama, trembled. At that moment, a monk who looked to be in his 40s, but his eyebrows and beard were all white, whispered, "I was the one who harmed Jingchan Jizang. If not for what I said, he would not have wanted to kill Chu Xiu." The monk had an exhausted expression on his face. Although he didn't look too old, his face was full of wrinkles. Although one could vaguely tell that he must have been a handsome young master when he was young, there was only a deathly aura left on his body at this moment. This person was Xiao Mocha from Subodhi Monastery. He had an extremely rough life. He was also the one who predicted that Chu Xiu would destroy Sabodi Monastery in the future. What happened to Chu Xiu was too shocking. After he told Jingchan Jizang, he did not tell anyone else. Therefore, he also believed that Jingchan Jizang's death was largely due to him. After Xiao Mocha told him everything, Rama sighed deeply. "Are you certain that the scenes you've predicted are real?" Xiao Mocha raised his head and said in a low voice, "Abbot, would not joke about such things. If it was not for the safety of the sect, why would I waste 100 years of my life to predict the secrets of heaven? This result is absolutely correct. Even if Su Jing from the Great Light Temple came, he might not be able to predict it more accurately than me." Rama sighed again. He shook his head and said, "Wrong, all of you have misunderstood. You have been involved in karma your entire life. I thought you had already walked out of it, but I did not expect you to still be trapped in it. You thought that you predicted that Chu Xiu destroying Sabodi Monastery was karmic, but in reality, why can't it be karmic? In the cycle of karma, which is the beginning and which is the end, who can say for sure? Karma and the secrets of heaven are not things that humans can see through, nor can they be changed by humans. You saw the future, and Uncle Jingchan Jizang tried in vain to change it. You thought that you could go against heaven and change fate, but you did not know that you had actually become pawns of the karma of heaven and earth. This is fate, and it is also a calamity. No one can avoid the world of great strife. Even if Sabodi Monastery has been in the south for a long time, we will definitely be dragged into it." After he finished speaking, Rama turned and left. However, Xiao Mocha, who was behind him, turned pale. He understood, and he understood. Wrong, very wrong. A smile that was uglier than crying appeared on his face. His voice was like a night owl's, hoarse and unpleasant to the ear. You tried in vain to change karma, but you became a pawn in karma. Su Jing, I am not as good as you. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Mocha immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression was extremely weary. The other monks wanted to help him up, but Xiao Mocha waved his hand and staggered out. A great mistake had been made, but a mistake was a mistake. It could only be a mistake to the end. Next, Sabodi Monastery might face endless trouble. At the same time, in the stronghold of the Yinma clan in eastern Qi, several big shots of the Yinma clan had gathered. For the Yinma clan, Chu Xiu's death was not only a loss of an outstanding future disciple, but also a resounding slap in the face. Of course, they needed to discuss whether they should return the slap or endure it. Apart from Wei Shuya, Qin Chaoxian and the other two warriors who had entered the 6 illusory realms naturally agreed to take revenge on Sabodi Monastery. However, the others had different opinions. Someone said in a low voice, "Elder Wei, we also know that Chu Xiu is dead. You are grieving, but you still have to calm down. That is Sabodi Monastery, one of the 2 Buddhist sects of the north and the south. They have the divine monk Rama, who is ranked 7th on the sovereign ranking. What can we do to take revenge? Also, to put it bluntly, when Yuan Tianfang died at the hands of the Great Light Temple's vain-thought Zen Hall's chief Su Du, we did not take revenge. Instead, we endured it. This time, something happened to a junior like Chu Xiu, and we have to mobilize the entire power of the Yinma clan. I'm afraid this is a little unreasonable. It will disappoint our subordinates." Wei Shuya suddenly raised his head when he heard that. The sharpness in his eyes made others not dare to look him in the eye. Most of the time, Wei Shuya looked like he had not woken up yet. He looked like an old man on the street who moved a chair and basked in the sun all day. However, many people had forgotten that this person was one of the 5 great sky demons who had once fought against the entire orthodox pugilistic world on the 9th heaven mountain. Last time, Yuan Tianfang was courting death. Moreover, he was killed by a martial artist who was a generation younger than him. What else could we do? However, this time, Sabodi Monastery bullied the weak and went too far. If he could kill the disciples of the Yinma clan, why can't the disciples of the Yinma clan kill their disciples? I know what you are afraid of. It is because the one who died was not your own disciple, but your own people. That's why you are afraid of sacrificing yourself. However, don't forget that we, the Yinma clan, have the legacy of the Kunlun devil cult in the past. If the sect leader really comes back one day and sees our cowardly appearance, even the sect leader will not admit that we are part of the Kunlun devil cult. The people present were speechless by Wei Shuya's words, but some still said in a low voice, "Elder Wei, it is not that we are afraid of sacrificing ourselves. We are all carrying a head on our shoulders. Who is afraid of who? However, the problem is that we do not want to make meaningless sacrifices. The great battle between the orthodox Tao and the devil had just ended not long ago. Who does not know the power of the mysterious realm of heaven and earth? If we make a move now, there is only one problem to consider. That is, who can stop the divine monk Rama? As long as Rama does not make a move, I don't care if he is Jingchan Jizong or Jingchan Retard. I want to see whether the heads of those old monks are harder or my heaven-weeping demon blade is harder." Wei Shuya said lightly, "Rama? We can't stop him, but someone can." "Who?" "Yi Shaonan." The people present immediately fell silent. Someone said hesitantly, "Elder Wei, do you mean to ask the moon-worshipping cult for help?" Wei Shuya said in a low voice, "It is not a request, but a transaction. The Yinma clan will not ask the Bright Demon clan for help. Both sides can only make a deal. Just like the last time the moon-worshipping cult came to us. But, what can we take out? The price of asking a heaven and earth mysterious realm powerhouse to make a move is probably even greater than the price Dong Huang Tai paid for us last time." Wei Shuya glanced at those people and said lightly, "Don't worry. Chu Xiu is a member of my clan, so I should take more. I will take the price of asking Yi Shaonan to make a move. However, I hope that you will not hold back when the time comes to attack the Sabodhi monastery." Hearing Wei Shuya's words, everyone present hurriedly said, "Of course. This is a matter that concerns the reputation of the Yinma clan. Of course we will not hold back." Wei Shuya let out a deep sigh when he saw this scene. His clan successor had been killed. If it had been Fang Qi Shao or Zhang Chengzhen who had died, the Sword King City and the Celestial Master Mansion would definitely fight to the death with the other party. In the end, the Yinma clan had to discuss for such a long time, hesitate for so long, and pay all kinds of prices to seek revenge. This made Wei Shuya feel bitterly disappointed. Chapter 837. Wei Shuya had only brought one person with him to moon-worshipping cult, the cave lord of Ghost Dragon, Wuma Mermaid. Wuma Mermaid was from West Chu. He spent most of his time in West Chu and had the most dealings with moon-worshipping cult. That was why Wei Shuya had brought him along. With Wei Shuya's status, it was easy for him to meet the higher-ups of moon-worshipping cult. Upon hearing that Wei Shuya had come, not only did Yi Shaonan, Dong Huang Tai, the high priest, and the saintess come, but the other divine magi of moon-worshipping cult also came in person. This was enough to give Wei Shuya face. In fact, in terms of seniority, Wei Shuya was the oldest in the entire demonic path. Although the two sides had different standpoints, everyone present respected Wei Shuya. Of course, there was one person who was somewhat dissatisfied. It was Mountain Ghost, one of the 9 divine magi. During the Great War on Floating Jade Mountain, he had become a little complacent. He really thought that moon-worshipping cult was the supreme demonic path. When he was discussing an alliance with the Hidden Devil clan, he was slapped away by Wei Shuya. Of course, on this occasion, no matter how dissatisfied Mountain Ghost was, he dared not say anything, because he had no right to speak here. Dong Huang Tai first asked, "May I know why Elder Wei has come to moon-worshipping cult?" Wei Shuya said in a low voice, "Chu Xiu is dead." Dong Huang Tai sighed and said, "Elder Wei, please restrain your grief. Dong Huang Tai really felt it was a pity, because he admired Chu Xiu very much. He had even thought of poaching Chu Xiu into moon-worshipping cult. He hadn't been present during that battle. If he had been present, he wouldn't have risked his life for Chu Xiu's sake. However, they were both from the demonic path, after all. If it was within his power, he would have helped them. The saintess of moon-worshipping cult also had a strange look on her face. Even now, she could not believe that Chu Xiu was really dead. Within the entire demonic path, the most outstanding junior of the younger generation was naturally Chu Xiu. Her light was completely overshadowed by Chu Xiu. However, she was very curious about Chu Xiu. At the same time, she didn't pay much attention to things like false reputation. Anyway, the previous saintesses of the moon-worshipping church didn't rely on hard work to get to their positions. In the end, such a person died. This made the moon-worshipping sect saintess feel a little strange no matter how she thought about it. Wei Shuya said in a low voice, "I do not need to grieve. My demonic path lineage believes in blood for blood, blood for blood, a tooth for a tooth. This time, I came to ask Cult Master Yi for help. At present, my Inma clan can't deal with divine monk Rama." Dong Huang Tai and the others frowned. Moon-worshipping church had just finished a great battle between the righteous and demonic paths. At this time, they didn't want to take action again. However, before Dong Huang Tai and the others could refuse, Wei Shuya took out a booklet and said in a low voice, "This is the handbook of Patriarch Dugu explaining martial arts to the 4 demon lords. As long as Cult Master Yi agrees, this is yours." There weren't many things in the Inma clan, but there were definitely a lot of things left behind by the Kunlun devil cult. However, this handbook didn't belong to the Inma clan, but to Wei Shuya. In the past, among the 9 heavenly demons of the 9 heavenly mountains, some of them were the true heirs of the Kunlun devil cult. They had a lot of good things in their hands. After the 5 heavenly demons were destroyed, they specially handed over their things to Wei Shuya before they died. Therefore, Wei Shuya's family background was not ordinary. At this time, before Dong Huang Tai said anything, Yi Xiaonan said directly, "I agree." For Yi Xiaonan, he didn't even want to learn Dugu Weiwei's martial arts experience. He just wanted to see how much difference there was between him and Dugu Weiwei. Wei Shuya laughed and threw the booklet to Yi Xiaonan, saying, "Cult Master Yi is straightforward. I'll leave Rama to Cult Master Yi. As long as Cult Master Yi can guarantee that Rama won't take a step out of Sabodhi Monastery, leave the rest to my Inma clan." After saying that, Wei Shuya left directly. Yi Xiaonan also took the booklet and left. At this time, the high priest of moon-worshipping church suddenly asked Dong Huang Tai, "When Chu Xiu was killed, weren't you there? If you were there, would you help that kid?" Dong Huang Tai thought for a moment and said, "Most likely. That kid is very much in line with my temperament. It's a pity that he stayed in the Inma clan. Elder Wei is a character. He dares to play so big at such an old age, but the others are just cowards. Aren't you afraid of nurturing a tiger? After all, that kid is a member of the Inma clan. Although we are all of the Devil Dao, we are not on the same path." Dong Huang Tai laughed and said, "That kid may be a tiger, but Cult Master is a dragon among men. As long as Cult Master is here, no matter who he is, Cult Master can suppress him. Forget it, it's useless to think about these things now. Whether Chu Xiu dies or not, it's good for our moon-worshipping church. In the previous war between the righteous and the demonic, our moon-worshipping church was the protagonist. Now, it's time for the Inma clan to make trouble." Dong Huang Tai was right. When the Inma clan made trouble, the power was far beyond the imagination of the people of Jianghu. Half a month later, almost all the experts of the Inma clan went to the South Barbarian land and began to kill the warriors of Sabodhi Monastery outside, as well as some of the South Barbarian tribes that were close to Sabodhi Monastery. The monks of Sabodhi Monastery did not produce, but they also needed to accept worship. Therefore, in the South Barbarian land, there were many tribes that were willing to devote themselves to Buddhism and worship Subodhi Monastery. Of course, this was just a nice way of saying it. In fact, these South Barbarian tribes needed the protection of Subodhi Monastery. At the same time, they provided various resources and other things to Subodhi Monastery. And this time, in the attack of the Immortal clan, these people also became one of the targets. Since then, many South Barbarian tribes were frightened and immediately smashed the Buddha statues in their houses. As long as someone came to their door, they would directly say that they were irreconcilable with the bald donkeys of Subodhi Monastery and only hoped that the other party would spare their lives. What the Immortal clan did was to dig up the foundation of Subodhi Monastery and destroy its reputation. Therefore, Subodhi Monastery immediately prepared to fight back. But at this time, moon-worshipping church master Yi Xiaonan went to Subodhi Monastery in the south and fought with Rama again. He forced Rama to not come out of Subodhi Monastery. Both sides seemed to be in trouble. Of course, even so, Subodhi Monastery was one of the North and South Buddhist sects. Even without Rama, the others were not to be trifled with. Subodhi Monastery immediately issued an edict and recalled all the sadhus outside. Some of the experts in the sect also took action and began to fight fiercely with the Immortal clan. At this time, both sides had victories and defeats, but in fact, Subodhi Monastery was at a disadvantage. Because the place where the battle took place was the entire South Barbarian land, the foundation of Subodhi Monastery was also destroyed. Therefore, no matter how they fought, Subodhi Monastery was at a disadvantage. Regarding this matter, most of the people in Jianghu had the same view, which was to wait and see. The Immortal clan's future successor had died, and he was an outstanding one at that. They were definitely angry. On the contrary, if the Immortal clan endured it, it was either the other party had a conspiracy or the other party was strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Therefore, no one stopped the Immortal clan from venting their anger. They just wanted to see how strong the Immortal clan was. If things were out of control, then they would join forces to stop it. Otherwise, why would they join forces? So that they wouldn't be splashed with blood. In the end, the result of this matter was also within the expectations of the people in Jianghu. The battle situation was indeed controlled within a certain range. After half a month, both sides had stopped fighting. Subodhi Monastery suffered a lot of losses, and the Immortal clan also suffered some casualties. If they continued to fight, they would probably fight to the death, so both sides had to withdraw. Of course, the most important reason was that the manual that Wei Shuya gave Yi Xiaonan was only enough for Yi Xiaonan to persevere for such a long time. Without Yi Xiaonan's obstruction, the Immortal clan did not dare to be so arrogant in the South Barbarian land. After a few months, the Jianghu was completely peaceful. After the storm, it was quiet and peaceful again. As for Chu Xiu, except for those who were deeply involved with him, who would remember him, this Jianghu would change once it was gone. If he died, then he could only become a passerby. Eastern Qi, Changlin County, Ji State Prefecture, Anping Street. This street was the largest and most prosperous street in the Ji State Prefecture. Warriors who came and went from the Ji State Prefecture also appeared here most often to sell or buy some weapons, pills, or some rare treasures and so on. Previously, because Prince Anil Jiangwenyuan was still alive, and because of the reputation of Prince Anil Mansion for being courteous to the wise, there were many warriors who came and went from the Ji State Prefecture. But with the collapse of Prince Anil Mansion a few years ago, this Ji State Prefecture was no longer as prosperous as before. The number of warriors who came and went directly decreased by more than half. At this time, in a shop called Treasure Pavilion on Anping Street, a short and fat old shopkeeper was leisurely basking in the sun at the door. His treasure pavilion was the property of the Ji State Prefecture's 5 yuan gang. Usually, there were many customers coming and going. But now it was noon, and there were still not many people. As the shopkeeper, he could only sit at the door and bask in the sun. At this time, a skinny, wretched-looking middle-aged man came out of nowhere. He came to the shopkeeper's side and said, "Shopkeeper's son, don't sleep. I've brought you something good." Shopkeeper's son slowly opened his eyes and said with disdain, "So it's you, Li Busan. Do you have nothing better to do? Running over to tease me? With your conduct, what good things could you possibly have on you?" Li Busan acted as if he had been greatly wronged. He said loudly, "I say, shopkeeper's son, as the saying goes, you can't judge a book by its cover. How do you know that I, Li Busan, will not be rich one day? Let me tell you, I once accompanied an important figure of the Jianghu to roam the Ji state prefecture. He gave me an ingot of purple gold. Even now, I can't bear to spend it. I'm still worshipping it at home." Shopkeeper's son said with disdain, "Don't brag. The important figure you speak of died in the secret realm with the high monks of the Sabodhi monastery a few months ago. In the future, you don't need to worship him. You can just burn incense. Let me tell you, kid, if you make fun of me, this master, the consequences will be very serious." Li Busan laughed, "Look at what you're saying. I can make fun of anyone, but not you. Look, the good stuff is here." As he said this, Li Busan carefully took out a package. Inside were a few secret boxes, a few bottles of pills, and a few pieces of scrap metal. Among them was a red bead. It was as red as blood, as if it was condensed from fresh blood. Chapter 838. Shopkeeper's son looked at Li Busan and asked suspiciously, "Where did you get these things from? Don't tell me they're illegal goods?" Shopkeeper's son knew of Li Busan's background. He could be considered half a member of the pugilistic world, but in reality he was just a street thug. He was neither skilled in literature nor martial arts, but because he was clever, he often hung around in the Ji prefecture. But these things were clearly not something he would take out. Illegal goods meant dirty goods. They were items with shady origins. Normally, it would be troublesome to collect these items because no one knew if the owner of these items would come knocking on their door. Li Busan hurriedly said, "Shopkeeper's son, don't speak nonsense. If they were really illegal goods, would I be able to take them out so openly? These were given to me by a loose practitioner from Northern Yen. He is a Northern Yen escort. Because he offended an enemy, he brought his entire fortune to Eastern Qi a month ago, preparing to retire from the pugilistic world. He wanted to exchange these items for gold and silver. Seeing that I am trustworthy, he handed them over to me. These are all items with righteous origins. Don't try to taint someone's innocence." Shopkeeper's son sneered, "You can be considered trustworthy?" Li Busan proudly said, "I, Li Busan, am still a person of the pugilistic world. I know what morality is. I have already decided to retire from the pugilistic world. These things are the foundation of my future life. How could I possibly blackmail someone? According to the rules of the pugilistic world, I will take a 30% cut. Shopkeeper's son, I am an understanding person. Give me a reasonable price, don't purposely lower the price." Shopkeeper's son coldly laughed. As he flipped through the items, he said, "Don't worry. In this line of work, I am more trustworthy than you. But there aren't any good goods here. 5 low-grade secret boxes. Although they were all unopened, there wasn't even a sect's insignia on them. The materials used were even more ordinary. They weren't anything valuable. 20 taels of silver for one. And these pills. 3 bottles of second revolution Qi nourishing pills. Their quality was average. 100 taels of silver. What was this? 5 bottles of third revolution blood recovery pills. This is what the big shot you worshipped in Northern Yen. If you say it's a second revolution pill, its effect is better than a second revolution pill. If you say it's a third revolution pill, it hasn't reached the third revolution, but its price is the same as a second revolution pill. It's simply disrupting the market. It was said that even the blood recovery pills were hard to sell in northern Yen. In eastern Qi, these pills could only be sold at the price of a second revolution pill, 80 taels of silver per bottle. And what is this? Shopkeeper's son looked suspiciously at the blood bead and even used the colored glass mirror to examine it. However, he was unable to understand what it was. Standing at the side, Li Busan said, "This is a good item. That cultivator said that he accidentally picked it up several months ago when he was on an escort errand in the extreme north. Originally, he thought that it was just an ordinary gemstone. However, he discovered that it is indestructible. It is definitely a treasure. No matter what, it should be worth several thousand taels of silver, right?" Shopkeeper's son disdainfully said, "A few thousand taels? What are you thinking? If you don't recognize it, just treat it as trash. 50 taels of silver at most. These items add up to 850 taels of silver. If you want to sell it, then sell it. If you don't, then forget it." Li Busan rubbed his hands together and said, "Shopkeeper's son, we are all acquaintances. Can you raise the price a little more?" No matter what, he came to Eastern Qi to settle down. This amount of money is not even enough to buy a house in Jianghu. Shopkeeper's son's eyelids drooped as he waved his hand, "A fixed price of 900 taels of silver. If you don't want to sell, then take these items and scram. Now that business is not doing well, this master does not have the mood to argue with you." Li Busan directly clapped his hands, "Deal." Shopkeeper's son took the money and threw it to Li Busan. He slowly placed the items on the counter. He did not know what the blood bead was, but it did not give off any special aura. He did not pay it any mind and casually placed it on the counter before going to eat lunch. At midnight, within the seemingly ordinary blood bead, there was a faint blood-red glow that resonated with the moonlight outside the window. Inside the blood bead, Lu Jianghu looked at Chu Xiu, who was also left with only a soul. He mumbled, "What did this senior say? You didn't listen to me when I told you to calm down. A little impatience will spoil great plans. Now look, you've become like this. The blood soul bead has fallen into the hands of an idiot who doesn't know what's good for him. When will this senior be able to see the light of day again? In a few more months without seeing blood, the blood soul bead will be completely sealed. When that time comes, you can accompany this senior to sleep." This blood-red bead was the blood soul bead that sealed Lu Jianghu. It was also the only place where Chu Xiu could preserve a sliver of life after risking his life. Back when he perished together with Jingchan, Chu Xiu's body had completely collapsed. However, he had after all cultivated the indestructible fiend pill. Relying on the indestructible fiend pill's power, he preserved his last trace of origin energy and protected his soul as he escaped into the blood soul bead. Actually, Chu Xiu had wanted to use his last trace of strength to drive the blood soul bead to Lu Fengxian or Wei Shuya. He wanted them to obtain it and save him, allowing him to reconstruct his body. In the end, the instant he fought with Jingchan, a spatial rift was torn open, causing the blood soul bead to fall out. It was picked up by an escort who came to the extreme north and ended up here. This time, although Chu Xiu managed to preserve his life, he paid a huge price. Without his body, the glazed gold threads goo in his body was naturally destroyed. Furthermore, his personal weapon, Heavenly Fiend Dance, had been destroyed. Furthermore, he had ended up in such a state. Just as Lu Jianghu had said, if the blood soul bead was not stained with blood in a few months, it would be completely sealed. At that moment, Chu Xiu was not worried. He had even conjured a huge reclining chair in the blood soul bead space. He lay on it and said indifferently, "What's the rush? Anyway, there are still a few months left. It's not like you didn't see that battle back then. I don't know why that old monk, Jingchan, went crazy. He was really prepared to kill me as soon as possible. He even burned his relics and extracted the power of the divine armament. If I hadn't risked my life back then, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to survive. Speaking of which, if you're so afraid of death, how did you reach your current status and become the Hall Master of the Kunlun Devil Cult's Blood Demon Hall? Lu Jiang, he said disdainfully, what do you mean I'm afraid of death? I'm being cautious. I'm treading on thin ice. If I were as rash as you, I would have died a long time ago. That way, I wouldn't have been able to become the Blood Demon Hall's Hall Master. Changing the topic, Lu Jiang, he suddenly said, by the way, I've always been curious. What's your relationship with Patriarch Dugu? I thought you only inherited some of Patriarch Dugu's cultivation techniques. I never expected you to even have an indestructible fiend pill. Apart from Patriarch Dugu, you are the second person in the world to condense an indestructible fiend pill. Chu Xiao said indifferently, I've already said that I'm the reincarnation of Patriarch Dugu. Why are you still kneeling to me? If you're obedient and serve me well, when I rebuild the Kunlun Devil Cult in the future, you will be able to become the fiend supremacy as you wish. Lu Jiang, he snorted coldly and said, as if I'll believe you. Lord Sect Master definitely doesn't look like you. Actually, Lu Jiang, he was also a little skeptical. Although he had always been suspicious, now that Chu Xiao said it directly, he was a little skeptical. Inside the blood soul bead, Chu Xiao was not as anxious as Lu Jianghe. There was always a way out. Lu Jianghe had been trapped for 500 years, but there was still a day when he would be able to get his hands on him. No matter how unlucky he was, there would be a way out. At that time, be it the Sabodhi monastery or those people who had kicked him when he was down, it would be time to settle the score. It was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Chu Xiao was not a gentleman, but as long as he could take revenge, even if it took 100 years, he was willing to wait. Therefore, during this period, Chu Xiao spent most of his time sorting out his own martial Dao. Chu Xiao's martial Dao was too heterogeneous. It was so heterogeneous that if he didn't count it carefully, even he himself didn't know how many martial Dao he had. In the past, Chu Xiao's schedule was too rushed. It was either this or that kind of thing. Therefore, when he was in seclusion, Chu Xiao would only comprehend his combat experience and cultivate his inner force. He rarely had the time to carefully sort out his martial Dao. Now that Chu Xiao had no body, he couldn't cultivate inner force and true qi. Therefore, this gave him time to carefully sort out his martial Dao. He thought about his martial Dao and made it more natural. During this time, Chu Xiao was still discussing with Lu Jianghe about the Blood God demonic technique and the Eternal Demon Pill. The Blood God demonic technique could reconstruct the body, so could the Eternal Demon Pill. The difference between the two was that one was fast and the other was slow. Reconstructing the body with the Blood God demonic technique was very simple. As long as there was fresh blood, one could devour large amounts of fresh blood to reconstruct the body and slowly become stronger. However, the invincible demon core was different. Any kind of power could allow the invincible demon core to reconstruct one's body, and the reconstructed body would not be a simple shape. Instead, it would be almost identical to one's previous body. Indestructible, just a little bit off. It couldn't be said to be indestructible. Of course, external objects like the glazed golden thread goo couldn't be returned. Therefore, during this period of time, Chu Xiao had been studying this matter with Lu Jianghe. If there was a chance, he could combine the Blood God demonic technique and the Eternal Demon Pill to reconstruct the body he wanted faster and stronger. At the same time, Chu Xiao made a promise to Lu Jianghe. When he reached the peak of the true fire spirit refinement realm and had the strength to suppress Lu Jianghe at his peak, he would let him out and help him reconstruct his body. However, towards this kind of promise, Lu Jianghe was very disdainful. You, Chu Xiao, are only left with a trace of your primordial spirit, and you still want to pretend to be a big bad wolf? Let's go out first. However, other than waiting, there was nothing else they could do. The blood soul bead was left on the counter of the treasure pavilion for half a month, but no one came. It should be said that the treasure pavilion's business was too bad. There were even times when no one came for several days. Even shopkeeper's son had almost forgotten about the blood soul bead and was sunbathing every day. Half a month later, a young martial artist wearing ordinary clothes stepped into the treasure pavilion. Chapter 839. Seeing this person, shopkeeper's son did not rush to greet him. Instead, he called out from behind the counter, "So it's young master Yi Xiao. Are you here to buy healing medicine again? It's not that I want to criticize you, but the Yi family finally managed to get some monthly allowance. Why don't you use it to buy some cultivation pills? Within the younger generation of the Yi family, your talent isn't the worst. But you're still only at the blood condensation realm. Why pay such a large price for your incurable father?" Yi Xiao bitterly smiled, "But he is still my father. As his son, I can't just watch him die like this." Hearing this, shopkeeper's son couldn't help but shake his head, thinking that this child was hopeless. The other party was a branch family disciple of the Ji State's Yi family. But his life within the family wasn't very good. Originally, a branch family disciple was also surnamed Yi. Every month, they would give the family some offerings. Supporting himself was not a problem. But because his father was heavily injured during a family mission, both his legs were crippled and he suffered internal injuries. Thus, he became a cripple. He completely relied on Yi Xiao to support him. The monthly offerings from the family were not even enough to buy medicine. To drag down one's own cultivation because of a cripple, from shopkeeper's son's point of view was not worth it. But since they weren't related, shopkeeper's son didn't say much. He only lightly shook his head. "All right, consider yourself lucky. I recently received a batch of good goods. Blood-returning pills from the northern Jianghu Hall. I'll sell them to you for 100 bottles. Although they are second revolution pills, their medicinal effects are close to the third revolution." Yi Xiao hesitated for a moment, but still took out the money. "Then I'll have to trouble shopkeeper's son to give me 3 bottles. As he took out the money, Yi Xiao accidentally knocked over a blood-red bead. Picking it up, he curiously asked, "What is this?" Shopkeeper's son glanced at the blood-spirit bead and said without a care, "Just a small toy I received. It doesn't have much use. If you want it, I'll give it to you. It's quite nice to embed on a weapon." If Yi Xiao hadn't mentioned it, he would have forgotten about it. Afterwards, shopkeeper's son also looked through the records, but did not find anything similar. He thought that it was some sort of natural or accidental stone. When some mystic realms collapsed, there would be spatial fluctuations, or the various forces produced by experts fighting. It was very easy to transform some ordinary stones and metals into strange things, which were useless and worthless. Not long ago in the northern Yan's extreme north, a secret territory had collapsed. Shopkeeper's son had assumed that this thing was formed because of the collapse of that secret territory. Moreover, this thing was not as shiny as a gemstone. Even if he sold it to those rich merchants, they would not buy it. It was just a piece of trash. Yi Xiao received the pill and placed the blood soul bead into his robes. "Then I'll have to thank shopkeeper Sunday." Yi Xiao took the pills and returned to the Yi clan. He took a deep breath. To be honest, he didn't like this place. Although this was the family that gave birth to him and raised him, Yi Xiao always felt a sense of oppression here, so much so that he couldn't breathe. After he walked into the Yi clan, Yi Xiao carefully walked by the side as if he was afraid of something. Right at this moment, a teasing voice sounded out abruptly. Oh, isn't this cousin brother Yi Xiao? What? You went to buy medicine for that crippled father of yours again? A young master in embroidered robes walked over with a few Yi clan disciples. His strength couldn't be considered to be strong, yet he was stronger than Yi Xiao, as he'd already attained the congenital realm. This person was called Yi Ting, the second young master of the Yi clan's direct descendant. Compared to Yi Xiao, who was a branch descendant, even though both of them were surnamed Yi, their statuses were like the difference between the heavens and the earth. At this moment, when he heard Yi Ting say his father was crippled, Yi Xiao couldn't help but grit his teeth and clench his fists tightly, yet he didn't dare make a move, nor did he dare reply. Because countless experiences in the past told him that not to mention being unable to defeat Yi Ting, even if he were to reply, the consequences would be even more severe. But even if he didn't speak, Yi Ting didn't let him off. As he looked at Yi Xiao's clenched fists, Yi Ting sneered with disdain. "What? You still want to hit me? Come on, go ahead and hit me." After walking over to stand before Yi Xiao, Yi Ting slapped Yi Xiao's face in an insulting manner, and his expression was arrogant to the limit, causing the people behind him to start ridiculing loudly as well. The flames of rage in Yi Xiao's eyes blazed. But he'd just raised his fist when Yi Ting kicked him flying, and then Yi Ting stepped on Yi Xiao's hand. Amidst Yi Xiao's cries of pain, Yi Ting withdrew the medicinal pill in Yi Xiao's pocket and sized it up before saying with disdain, "Blood recovery pill? The clan didn't give you allowance for you to raise a cripple, you're truly a disgrace to my Yi clan." As he spoke, Yi Ting directly tossed the medicinal pill to the side, causing the porcelain bottle to shatter and the medicinal pill to scatter all over the ground. When he saw this scene, Yi Xiao immediately stood up and carefully picked up those medicinal pills. Yi Ting didn't stop him this time, and he just roared with laughter with the others. "Look, doesn't he look like a dog?" The others immediately chimed in. "Yes, second young master says he looks like a dog. He's surely a dog, and he can't become a pig even if he wants to." Yi Xiao trembled as he picked up the blood recovery pill, and under the ridicule of the others, he returned to his own small courtyard dejectedly. His father was already haggard in appearance, and his internal injuries had already relapsed, causing him to be unconscious for most of the day. After he helped his father consume the blood recovery pill, Yi Xiao returned to his own room and removed his clothes that were covered in dirt from being kicked earlier, and a wave of piercing pain came from his hand. His entire right hand was already dripping with blood from being stepped on by Yi Ting earlier. Meanwhile, "Ding" sounded out, and when Yi Xiao lowered his head to look, the blood-colored pearl he got from Manager Sun had fallen onto the ground. Yi Xiao instinctively picked it up and placed it on the table. At this moment, he was still dejected, and he didn't notice that at the instant the blood-colored pearl came into contact with his blood, it abruptly bloomed with a wisp of a blood-colored glow, and it seemed to be evil and dazzling. At this moment, Yi Xiao was unable to notice all this, as only a single word echoed out in his mind. "Why?" In the entire Yi clan, his strength wasn't the weakest, but no matter if it was a branch family disciple or a direct descendant disciple like Yi Ting, all of them took pleasure in bullying and humiliating him. "I've obviously never offended them, and I've obviously already exercised forbearance, not retaliating when hit, not retaliating when scolded, so why do they still want to bully and humiliate me? Why? Why? You want to know why?" A voice suddenly arose within Yi Xiao's mind, and it instantly caused him to be greatly shocked. "Who? Who's speaking?" That voice didn't answer Yi Xiao, and it only said indifferently, "Why did they bully and humiliate you? Because your strength isn't strong enough, and because your background isn't as high as theirs. There's no love without reason in this world, yet there's hatred without reason. Human nature is evil by nature, and there's never a reason. If they want to bully you, then bully you. How could there be so many reasons? It's only because your background isn't good enough, and your strength isn't strong enough." Yi Xiao instinctively forgot the origins of that voice, and he couldn't help but say, "There are only so many direct descendants in the entire Yi clan, yet there are a few tens of people in the branch family. Why do they only bully me and not bully others?" The voice sneered. "Because others are willing to be their dogs. Have you forgotten those people by Yi Ting's side today? Their background is similar to yours, and their strengths are even inferior to you. But they're willing to be Yi Ting's dogs and help their master bully others, so they naturally don't have to be bullied. What about you? Are you willing to be someone's dog? You're unwilling, so they can only go and bully you even more intensely. Because you're even inferior to a dog. The few words spoken by that voice seemed to have revealed all the ugliness in the world before Yi Ting, and it was bloody and extremely ugly. At the same time that he felt uncomfortable at this moment, he was looking towards the surroundings. Where exactly did this voice come from? Stop looking, I'm right in front of you. Only now did Yi Xiao truly notice the blood soul pearl that emitted a blood-red dim light, and he said hesitantly, "It's you? What thing are you?" Thing? In so many years, there hasn't been anyone that dared call me a thing. Now, if you want to take revenge, if you want no one to bully you, and if you want to change your fate, then drip your blood onto the blood soul pearl. The voice was filled with a bewitching force, and it caused Yi Xiao's imagination to instantly roam. In the legends of the world, there were frequently ancient experts that had their souls trapped within something due to various accidents, and then it was obtained by an ordinary youth. After that, they obtained the guidance of an expert, causing them to transform into a dragon upon encountering a storm and walk towards the peak of their lives, causing them to become legends of the world. However, according to the legends, these ancient experts were kind and amiable grandpas who would carefully guide you in your cultivation. But now, this voice was extremely cruel as it told others that one's nature was evil. No matter how one looked at it, this didn't seem like something a grandpa expert would say, and this caused Yi Xiao to be slightly vigilant. Meanwhile, the voice laughed strangely and said, "What? You're afraid? You've already become like this, and you've lived a life that's even inferior to a dog. What are you afraid of? You don't even dare gamble with your lowly life? Useless trash." Yi Xiao seemed to be provoked by this voice. He picked up a long sword and directly cut his palm. Immediately, blood dripped onto the blood soul pearl. In an instant, the blood soul pearl began to absorb Yi Xiao's blood, and the blood-colored luster on it became brighter. Just as Yi Xiao's face was a little pale, the blood soul pearl stopped absorbing his blood. But at the same time, Yi Xiao's consciousness was pulled into a world. It was a world of blood. An endless sea of blood was tumbling, and one of the middle-aged men was trapped on a bronze chair. The other person was dressed in a black robe, and he sat on a blood-colored dragon chair. The aura around him was extremely powerful. But there was a layer of blood-colored mist on his face, making it impossible to see his face clearly. The middle-aged man pointed at the figure on the dragon chair and chuckled. "Don't look at me. The one who pulled you in is that guy. Your opportunity is him." Yi Xiao looked left and right, and his hair stood on end. He was now certain that this thing was not a good person. It was a far cry from the seniors and grandpas in the legends who liked to guide the younger generation in their cultivation. Chapter 840. Chu Xiu sat on the blood-colored dragon chair and observed Yi Xiao. At the same time, Yi Xiao was also carefully observing Chu Xiu and Lu Jianghe. Chu Xiu could not do something like playing the role of a personal grandfather. Moreover, given his patience, he did not have the time to wait for Yi Xiao to truly become an expert before letting him out. Therefore, he could only use a more radical method. After all, in such a long time, Yi Xiao was the only person who had obtained the blood soul bead and activated it. Furthermore, he had contributed some qi and blood, even though the qi and blood had been weakened to a certain extent. At the moment, although there were two people in the blood soul bead, Lu Jianghe had been sealed inside by Dugu Weiwei. His restrictions were too great. On the other hand, Chu Xiu was only staying temporarily to find a place for his spirit to stay. Therefore, he had a lot more freedom and could temporarily act as a fake dark version of a personal grandfather. "Who are you?" Yi Xiao spat out these 4 words with a slightly trembling voice. Everything that had happened today was like living in a dream. He even wondered if he was dreaming. Lu Jiang he had a teasing smile on his face. He did not say anything and just watched Chu Xiu's performance. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Who I am is not important. What's important is what you want. You only need a little. That's enough. I can give you whatever you want. However, the prerequisite is that you have to be obedient and take out something that satisfies me. There is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. You have to give up as much as you want." Hearing this, Yi Shao immediately became vigilant from the bottom of his heart. The person in front of him did not look like a good person. Could the person he had picked up be a demon that had been sealed here by a righteous expert? Chu Xiu seemed to have seen through Yi Shao's thoughts. He sneered and said, "I know what you're thinking. You're afraid of me and worried that I'll harm you. However, don't you know what kind of situation you're in now?" He was a piece of trash who was bullied and humiliated by others. He was clearly a disciple of a large clan, but in the end, his life was even worse than those loose cultivators who made a living in the outside world. To the direct descendants of the Yi family, or even to the entire Yi family, you're just a dog that's not even comparable to a servant. You're already a pile of mud. Even if you're worse, how bad can you be? I don't want your life. On the contrary, I can give you more things so that you can regain your dignity. Now, you can bet on whether you believe me or not. Yi Shao clenched his fists tightly, and his eyes were bloodshot. He thought about all the humiliation he had suffered over the years, and how he had been humiliated even though he had been very careful and not done anything. He squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth, "I promise you." "What do you want?" Chu Xiu's lips curled into a smile, "There's no rush. You can't give me what I want with your current strength. That's why I have to give you something first. You're too weak. You can't go on like this. Concentrate, I'll impart the cultivation method into your mind." Yi Shao had just nodded when he suddenly let out a groan, and an intense pain came from his mind. But in the next moment, 4 ancient cultivation methods appeared in his mind. Yi Shao roughly flipped through them and immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. He was only at the blood condensation realm, but he was still a cultivator who had experienced the orthodox martial arts education of the Yi family, so he had some experience. These cultivation methods and martial skills were powerful and exquisite, simply beyond his imagination. Compared to the cultivation methods of his Yi family's cultivation methods couldn't even be counted as dog shit. Chu Xiu lightly said, "Your foundation is too weak. This Dao sect's marrow cleansing secret art can help you cleanse your body and rebuild your foundation. The devil blood technique is a strange technique of the devil path. Although it can be mastered quickly, it won't cause you any negative consequences. It can help you quickly increase your cultivation. The blood transformation saber is used in conjunction with the devil blood technique, but this saber consumes your own blood qi. You can't use it unless you're risking your life. Finally, the Azure Dragon Sleeve is a simple saber technique, which contains the essence of ruthlessness and decisiveness of saber techniques. Your Yi family's swordsmanship is too weak. You can practice it on the surface, but you should practice the saber internally." After imparting the cultivation method to Yi Shao, Chu Xiu directly kicked his spirit out of the blood-soul bead. When his spirit returned to his body, Yi Shao was still a little dizzy. He even pinched himself, not daring to believe all this was true. But looking at the blood-soul bead that was still glowing with a blood-red light in front of him, and the cultivation method in his mind, Yi Shao couldn't help but believe all this. Thinking of this, Yi Shao's eyes suddenly blossomed with a touch of fervor. No matter who the mysterious person sealed in the blood-soul bead was or what his purpose was, the cultivation method was real. As long as there was a cultivation method, there would be power. Yi Shao didn't delay at all. He directly gave up sleeping and began to practice the Xiantian skill. In the blood-soul bead, Lu Jiang he curled his lips and said, "I say, is the boy you chose reliable? His strength is too weak, and his talent is too poor. If you want to rely on him to collect enough blood to rebuild your body, I guess you'll have to wait for 8 to 10 years. In my opinion, it's better to trick this boy into giving the blood soul bead to someone else and make other plans. Chu Xiu said lightly, I don't rely on him to collect enough blood to rebuild my body, but on my own. Besides, don't look down on this boy. I didn't have a chance before, but now that I've given him a chance, I can let him soar to the sky. And his character is actually easy to control, just in line with my current needs. Lu Jiang, he said doubtfully, are you serious? Why don't I see what's special about this boy? What's your background? Chu Xiu suddenly asked. Lu Jiang, he hesitated for a moment, but still said, I used to be a water bandit, so what? Don't look down on water bandits. Back then, I was the chief of the 7 northern counties of eastern Qi. Even the monks of the Great Guangming Temple and the Daoists of the Longhu Mountain had to pay for the passage if they wanted to travel by water. Otherwise, I would throw them into the water to feed the fish. Chu Xiu said indifferently, after that, you kicked an iron plate and were chased by the righteous sects until you had nowhere else to go. Finally, you joined the Kunlun demon sect. Lu Jiang, he suddenly blushed. Obviously, Chu Xiu's guess was basically right. With his character, it was only a matter of time before such a thing happened. Without continuing to ridicule Lu Jiang, Chu Xiu just said lightly, you used to be a water bandit. Even when you were just a small water bandit, it was you who bullied others, not others who bullied you. But this Yi Shao? He was bullied to such an extent that he was not even comparable to a pile of mud. That's why he was unwilling. A person with unwillingness, a person with desires is the best to control. In the past, he didn't have power. Now that I've given him power, how far he can go will definitely be beyond your imagination. Talent is important, but unless your talent can reach the level of Zhang Chengzhen, otherwise, it will be useless. There aren't many people in this world who can truly rely on talent to climb to a high position from the bottom. Lu Jiang, he still had some doubts, but people like him, which family doesn't have a few? Are you sure he can make it? Don't waste your time. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, to be able to take care of his own father, even if he was bullied to the point where he is worse than a dog, he still isn't willing to become a dog. This kind of person has a bottom line. Knowing that he is no match for others, he was still able to endure the humiliation. This proves that he still has some forbearance and perseverance. He isn't a brainless idiot. Of course, the most important thing is that he met me now. If it weren't for me, he could only suffer for the rest of his life. But now that I've taken action, do you think his life will still be the same as before? Lu Jianghe curled his lips in disdain. After talking for so long, he, Chu Xiu, was confident in himself. This act of acting cool was really refreshing and refined. However, Lu Jiang, he was not in a hurry. Chu Xiu was stored in the blood soul bead, but he was trapped here. If he wanted to rebuild his body, it would be Chu Xiu who did it first. Lu Jiang, he just watched from the side. Anyway, he had been trapped for 500 years. As long as he didn't fall into a deep sleep again, everything would be fine. At noon the next day, Yi Shao had practiced from late at night to the present, and he had already mastered the Xiantian skill. Such a fast speed didn't mean that Yi Shao was talented, but that when Chu Xiu gave him the Xiantian skill, he had already poured all the detailed details of his understanding of the Xiantian skill into Yi Shao's mind, which already had some intention of enlightening him. The advantage of this was that now Yi Shao was basically copying his homework, which was very simple and convenient. But the disadvantage was that he didn't have the time to think and comprehend the Xiantian skill by himself. His understanding of the Xiantian skill would always be poor, which was somewhat disadvantageous for his future. However, now Chu Xiu only needed him to become stronger as soon as possible. How could he care about the future? Therefore, in the past few days, Yi Shao didn't go out at all. He just practiced the Xiantian skill given by Chu Xiu in the house, as if he was possessed by the devil. It wasn't until 10 days later that someone came to him and informed him that the family was going to hold a meeting and asked him to rush over. In the past few days, in addition to occasionally giving pointers to Yi Xiao, Chu Xiu also inquired about the recent events in Jianghu and the current situation of the Yi family. It had been half a year since the collapse of the illusory Six Realms. In addition to the matter of Wei Shuya helping to take revenge, Yi Xiao didn't know about the specific situation of the Guanzhong torture room and the Zhenwu Hall. After all, he was just a collateral disciple of a small family in a small town. He didn't have the mood, nor did he have the channel to know these things. Chu Xiu didn't let Yi Xiao inquire about it. Even if Yi Xiao knew that something had happened to his foundation, he couldn't care less. He didn't even have a body now. If he knew, it would only add to his troubles. Therefore, for now, he could only think of a way first. After his body was reconstructed and his strength was restored, he could think of other things. Chapter 841. The Yi family that Yi Xiao was from was actually not very strong. It was slightly stronger than the Chu family that Chu Xiu was from, but not by much. The patriarch of the Yi family, Yi Kun, was at the inner supreme realm. It was said that the Yi family had a patriarch who had reached the three-flower realm, but he had not come out to manage matters for many years. In theory, anyone could participate in the Yi family's meetings, but in reality, collateral disciples like Yi Xiao could only stand at the side and listen to instructions. Those who were truly qualified to participate in the discussions were the 10 or so direct descendants of the Yi family. Yi Kun sat on the main seat and said in a deep voice, "The birthday of the Sun family's patriarch will be held in half a month. I've prepared the birthday gifts, so I'm going to send some young disciples to attend the birthday celebration. I'll choose from all of you. Remember, don't embarrass the Yi family." The collateral disciples present nodded in agreement, and their faces revealed excited expressions. This was not difficult at all. It was a complete show of face. Moreover, it was the Sun family of River East, one of the 9 great families. Other families that were similar in strength to the Yi family did not even have the chance to attend the birthday celebration. The Yi family had the right to attend because they had a mine that provided materials for the Sun family of River East. They could be considered a vassal of the Sun family. With such a strong relationship, the Yi family had the right to attend the birthday celebration. Yi Kun looked at the direct descendants of the Yi family present, coughed, and said, "Second brother, you'll be in charge of this matter." Yi Ting was overjoyed when he heard this. He stood up and said, "Thank you, father." The smile of the Yi family's eldest son, Yi Ling, stiffened slightly when he heard this. He was slightly stronger than Yi Ting and had already reached the inner supreme realm. Moreover, he was close to 30 years old and had long been managing some of the family's businesses. However, Yi Kun did not give him the task of showing his face. This made Yi Ling feel slightly indignant, but at the same time, he did not dare to refute his father's decision. However, at this moment, Yi Kun said, "Eldest brother, you should have been the one to attend this matter, but there are some problems with the family's mine. Steward Zhang is getting on in years, and his old injuries have relapsed recently. He's preparing to retire. So, you have to watch over it temporarily and pick a new steward to manage the mine." When Yi Ling heard this, the indignant look on his face immediately disappeared. He happily agreed. The Yi family's mine was the foundation of the Yi family. Now that Yi Kun had asked him to manage the mine and gave him the full power to promote the new manager, this kind of practical benefit was more substantial than going out and showing his face. Chu Xiu nodded when he saw Yi Kun's methods in the Blood Soul Pearl. This fellow had some tricks up his sleeve. At the very least, when it came to dealing with internal conflicts within the family, he was much better than his cheapskate father, who only acted according to his own preferences. Although there was only one successor, it was impossible for every family to only nurture one. However, in order to prevent internal strife within the family, as the head of the family, he could not be too biased. According to the sequence, the eldest brother, Yi Ling's resignation should be announced first, followed by the second brother's. In the end, Yi Kun had first announced the news of Yi Ting going to the Sun clan, causing him to be overjoyed and feel proud that he was stronger than his big brother. Then, he announced that it was given to Yi Ling's or mine to make up for his disappointment, making him feel as if he had found it after losing it. This way, everyone would be happy. Not to mention anything else, this patriarch was really good at playing tricks like this. Meanwhile, Yi Kun said, "The people that head to the Sun clan represent the face of my Yi clan, so we have to be careful. Second brother, select a few disciples that possess a good strength and appearance to head there." Yi Ting hurriedly nodded, and then he picked out a few collateral family martial artists that he usually had a good relationship with. When it came to something like showing one's face, he naturally had to choose someone from his own side. Right at this moment, Chu Xiu said to Yi Shao, "Stand out and fight for this position to head to the Sun clan." Yi Shao was stunned, and then he replied in his mind. "Yi Ting has detested me since a long time ago, and he won't allow me to go to something like showing my face." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "You won't go just because he doesn't allow you to? This is a matter of the entire Yi clan, and it isn't a matter of Yi Ting alone. So long as you have the strength, then on what basis would the Yi clan refuse to allow you to go under the gazes of everyone? If you want to stand out, then you must stand before everyone and walk out of the Yi clan. Otherwise, if you stay in a tiny place like this for your entire lifetime, you can only be a frog at the bottom of a well." When he heard Chu Xiu, Yi Shao gritted his teeth and stood out. "Patriarch, disciple is willing to go as well." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present was stunned. Yi Zhao's sense of existence in the entire Yi clan was extremely low, and he was extremely stubborn. He didn't say a single word when being bullied and targeted by Yi Ting, so he was detested by the latter. There weren't many people in the entire Yi clan that were willing to come into contact with him, as they were afraid of drawing trouble to themselves. Never had they imagined that he would actually take the initiative to stand out and strive for benefits. But did he have the qualifications? Even if it wasn't for Yi Ting, he wasn't ranked amongst the collateral family disciples of the entire Yi clan. The parents and seniors of the other collateral family members of the Yi clan were still alive, and they'd prepared medicinal pills and cultivation resources for them. Only Yi Shao didn't have all these things. He even had to take out his allowance to purchase medicinal pills to raise his crippled father that was on the verge of death, and his cultivation had fallen behind the others since long ago. Yi Ting grunted coldly. "What trouble are you causing? Fuck off to the side." Yi Shao didn't answer, and he just straightened his neck and looked at Yi Kun as he said, "Patriarch, disciple feels that I have the qualifications to go." Yi Kun looked at Yi Shao for a short while before vaguely remembering this Yi clan collateral family disciple. He wasn't infuriated. As a Yi clan disciple, wanting to stand out and rise up was a good thing. Even if his own son didn't like Yi Shao, he was surnamed Yi after all. Yi Kun only said indifferently, "Do you think you have the qualifications?" But something like qualifications isn't something that can be obtained just by talking about it. "Second brother, find someone and test his strength." Yi Ting gestured with his mouth, and a Yi clan collateral family martial artist laughed savagely as he walked out. "Cousin brother Yi Shao, swords have no eyes, you have to be careful." This collateral family martial artist was at the blood condensation realm as well. Even though he was younger than Yi Ting, the time he stepped into the blood condensation realm was much earlier than Yi Ting, and defeating Yi Ting was extremely easy. Right when that Yi clan disciple had just raised the sword in his hand and intended to execute the Yi clan's breezy fallen leaf sword to attack Yi Shao, a wisp of a cold light suddenly flashed by. A clang sounded out as the sword in the Yi clan disciple's hand was actually directly blasted flying, and it was even to the extent that a wound split open between his thumb and forefinger, causing fresh blood to flow out. After a short moment, he seemed to have recovered from his shock, and he looked at his own hand as he let out a sharp cry. Everyone from the Yi clan present looked at Yi Shao with gazes as if they were looking at a freak. He blasted his opponent's weapon flying with a single move, then wouldn't he only need 2 moves to take his opponent's life? Where did Yi Xiao get such strength from? Why is his sword so swift? Yi Kun stared fixedly at Yi Xiao as well. He possessed a strength at the inner energy realm, so he naturally saw through everything long ago. Yi Xiao only made a simple slash, but the speed of this slash was too fast, so fast that his opponent couldn't even react in time. This slash was not some powerful martial art technique, but simply displayed its extreme speed and accuracy. Moreover, he also discovered that Yi Xiao's foundation was actually very solid, which was very rare in a small clan like theirs. However, no matter what, it was also a good thing that such an outstanding young man had emerged from the Yi clan's side branch. Therefore, Yi Kun just casually waved his hand and said, "Not bad, in 3 days, you will follow second brother and the others to the Sun clan. Remember, don't show any fear, and don't embarrass our Yi clan." Yi Xiao walked out expressionlessly, and the expressions of the surrounding people also changed a little when they looked at Yi Xiao. Yi Xiao couldn't explain it, but in short, it was not the contemptuous and disdainful gaze from before. This kind of feeling was very good. Do you feel it? This is power. Chu Xiu's voice rang in Yi Xiao's ear. His tone was very light, but it was filled with a strange bewitching power. Only when you pick up a sword and possess sufficient strength would you be taken seriously by others. Things like grasping the authority of the world when awake and lying on the knees of beauties when drunk are utterly bullshit to you now. Having power isn't able to allow you to obtain anything, yet it's able to make others unable to take away something from you. For example, dignity. Yi Xiao took a deep breath and clenched his fists tightly. He'd already made his decision. No matter what the origins of the mysterious person within the blood-colored pearl was, or if he was some sort of demon or ghost, so long as the mysterious person was able to give him strength, then he would follow the mysterious person until the end. The taste of strength was something that no one that had tasted it would ever want to give up. If those so-called people that had retired from the world really wanted to retire from the world, then why didn't they seal their meridians and cripple their own cultivation? In this way, under the precondition that their lifespans weren't affected, they wouldn't possess the slightest bit of martial strength, and they would be completely cut off from the world. But in reality, there weren't many that would really do this, because they were unable to part with their strength. Presently, Yi Xiao was like this as well. He'd truly tasted the taste of strength, and he was unwilling to part with it, nor was he able to let it go. 3 days later, Yi Xiao was going to head to the Sun clan with Yi Ting and the others. Of course, it wasn't just Yi Ting that was leading the group, and there was a branch family senior of the Yi clan that possessed a strength at the congenital realm as well. The senior frequently walked in the trading companies that weren't part of the industry, and he possessed comparatively abundant experience. They'd brought along birthday gifts to the river this time, and for the sake of avoiding any mishaps from occurring on the way, they'd specially sent an experienced senior to follow along with them, and it could be considered as an escort. So Yi Ting had restrained himself from looking for trouble with Yi Xiao all along the way. He wasn't an idiot, so he naturally knew what was important and what was urgent. His status in the clan was originally inferior to his older brother, and if he were to cause any trouble on the way, then he would probably be unable to maintain his current status. After arriving at the Sun clan in an ordinary manner all along the way, Chu Xiu saw the entrance of the Sun clan through Yi Xiao's consciousness, and a trace of a gloomy light flashed within his eyes. At that time, that group of people thought he was dead for sure, and they'd lined up to add insult to injury with the intention of killing him. Chu Xiu remembered all of these things, and when he settled the score in the future, not a single one of them would be able to escape. Chapter 842. Although the Sun family of Jiangdong was forbearing, it did not mean that they were really low-key. The birthday of the Sun family of Jiangdong could be said to be quite luxurious. More than half of the forces of the Eastern Qi martial arts world and some famous casual martial artists were invited. In fact, the Sun family of Jiangdong was too lazy to invite a small family like the Yi family. Even if they had a vassal relationship, the other party's strength was too weak. They were invited purely to make up the number of people and strengthen their power. In fact, the Sun family of Jiangdong did this because of Chu Xiu. The Sun family of Jiangdong had been forbearing for a long time. In the past, everyone knew that the Sun family of Jiangdong had something up their sleeves. Although they were forbearing to the big forces and even bowing to them, they would not pretend to be weak to those forces with similar strength. On the contrary, they would pretend to be the boss. But in the illusory six realms, the two mainstays of the Sun family of real pellet state were killed by Chu Xiu. This was a huge loss for a sect like the Sun family of Jiangdong. At the same time, it also attracted other forces to probe and spy on them. Therefore, Sun Zuchang, who hadn't held a birthday party for decades, suddenly wanted to hold one this time. He even made it such a grand occasion because he wanted to tell the other forces and sects that although the Sun clan of River East had suffered a loss this time, it was only a tiger that had lost 2 teeth, and its claws were still there. When other big forces entered the Sun family of Jiangdong, they were personally greeted by the disciples or deputies of the Sun family of Jiangdong. But an inconspicuous small family like the Yi family did not have such treatment. Only a servant led them in, and he even said arrogantly, after entering, "Be careful for me. Don't offend any big shots. You can't afford to offend them." Yi Ting, who was still aggressive in the family, quickly nodded and bowed at this time. His attitude was extremely respectful. Only Yi Shao felt a little uncomfortable. They were obviously guests who came to celebrate, but why were they even inferior to servants? But at this time, the other people of the Yi family did not have such a mentality. Instead, they were still looking at the guests and sighing. At other times, they wouldn't see so many experts from the major factions in the underworld. Sword Hiding Villa, Heavenly Weapon Pavilion, Chunyang Dao Sect, Jianghu Cult, Shangshuaying Clan, Shangyang Mo Clan, Gaoping Lu Clan, White Tiger Clan, and so on. There were even people from the Eastern Qi Imperial Court. When these people arrived, they were all welcomed respectfully by the disciples of the Sun clan of River East. They had an extraordinary bearing, and Yi Shao was actually a little envious of them. "Are you envious of these people?" Chu Xiu's voice suddenly rang in Yi Shao's ears. Yi Shao was stunned for a moment before replying, "Of course I'm envious. A real man should be like this. His reputation will shake the martial world, and he will be treated with respect wherever he goes." Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Don't worry, when you have power and status, you will also receive such treatment. However, don't be fooled by their current glory. If they were to encounter someone stronger than them, or a force stronger than them, they would still have to treat them with respect." Yi Shao nodded and suddenly asked, "Then, Senior, were you like them before?" Yi Shao was not an idiot. This senior, who was only left with his primordial spirit, had been trapped in a small bead, but he was still able to retain his primordial spirit. This kind of strength must have been achieved by those legendary masters. Moreover, the few cultivation methods that he had casually pulled out could instantly destroy the Yi clan's cultivation methods. His background was certainly not ordinary. He did not dare to inquire about Chu Xiu's identity, but at this moment, he could not help but test him. Chu Xiu let out a strange laugh and said, "It's a little different. If I appear in front of them now, there will be those who hate me, those who fear me, and those who want to kill me again. There will be only a few who truly respect me." Yi Shao shrunk his neck slightly. Could this senior be one of those world-shocking demons from the legends? However, he did not care that much. Whether he was a demon or not, as long as the other party could give him power, he would follow him to the end. After trying the benefits that strength brought and the dignity that came with it, Yi Shao was unable to let go of it. At this moment, Sun Zhongming of the Sun clan walked over, and when he saw the Yi clan, he came over with a smile on his face and greeted, "So it's the brothers of the Yi clan. Your guests from afar, come in and have a seat." Yi Ting and the others were overwhelmed by the unexpected favor when they saw Sun Zhongming greeting them personally, and they hurriedly started to flatter Sun Zhongming. After Chu Xiu's batch of geniuses on the Dragon Tiger list stepped into the real pellet realm successively, the entire Dragon Tiger list had practically changed a batch of people. Sun Zhongming was very inconspicuous before, but he could be considered to be not bad amongst this batch of geniuses on the Dragon Tiger list. At this moment, Sun Zhongming had already attained the unity of the world, and his ranking on the Dragon Tiger list had already reached the 10th position. At least in the eyes of the Yi clan, he was already an extraordinary genius. Of course, in the eyes of others, there weren't any outstanding figures on the Dragon Tiger list in this generation, and they were truly too inferior when compared to Chu Xiu's generation that was filled with monstrous geniuses. Meanwhile, Chu Xiu said in Yi Zhao's mind instead, "Go, say some good words to go along with Sun Zhongming and let him have a good impression of you. At the very least, you have to leave behind a deep impression in his heart." Yi Zhao was stunned and said with a bitter smile, "Senior, I'm unable to do this. How would I know how to flatter and curry favor with others?" Yi Zhao really wasn't refusing this, as he had a stubborn temper. If he was willing to lower his head and curry favor with others, then perhaps he would become one of Yi Ting's lackeys. How could he be in such a miserable state like before? Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I didn't ask you to flatter and curry favor with him, I only asked you to go along with him. Conversely, you can't bow and scrape like Yi Ting and the others, and your attitude should be neither servile nor overbearing. It's fine if you don't understand, I know Sun Zhongming's character. You just have to do as I say. This person possesses some strength and ability, but he's arrogant and conceited, and he's unable to see through himself and feels that he wouldn't lose to others. Simply speaking, the ambition of a person like this isn't worthy of his strength and ability. If you want to make him have a good impression, then you only have to acknowledge him in this aspect. Come, I'll teach you how to do it." In terms of figuring out the heart of others, Chu Xiu had never lost to anyone. Even though he'd only come into contact with Sun Zhongming a few times and everything else was from hearsay, he was able to roughly figure out Sun Zhongming's character. At this moment, Sun Zhongming was already slightly sick of being flattered by Yi Ting and the others as he stood there. As the most outstanding disciple in the younger generation of the Sun clan, what sort of flattery hadn't he heard? This group of fellows had already caused him to feel slight detest. But he knew that the Yi clan was a vassal clan of their Sun clan, and the Yi clan provided the Sun clan with ores at a low price all year round. So as the future successor of the clan leader, he had to display his bearing of being courteous to the wise and make the Yi clan submit to him wholeheartedly. Right at this moment, Sun Zhongming noticed that there was a person amongst the group of young people from the Yi clan that didn't surround him and flatter him disgustingly like the others, and the person instead stood there with a sword in his hand while looking at Sun Zhongming with eyes that revealed an excited and reverent expression. When compared like this, Sun Zhongming was slightly interested towards this young man, and he looked at Yi Zhao and asked, "This is?" Yi Ting and the others were stunned, and they didn't know why Sun Zhongming would suddenly ask about Yi Zhao. Before they could answer, Yi Zhao said, "I'm Yi Zhao, a disciple of the Yi clan. I've heard of young Master Sun's great reputation for a long time, and now that I've met you today, you really don't live up to your reputation." The faces of Yi Ting and the others turned livid when they heard this. What does he mean by live up to his reputation? Does this fellow want to kill us and kill the Yi clan? But Sun Zhongming didn't get angry, and he seemed to be interested instead as he asked, "Why don't you tell me exactly how this young master doesn't live up to his reputation?" Yi Zhao said with a low voice, "The people of the Jianghu say that the geniuses of this generation on the dragon rankings are inferior to the previous generation, and I thought so as well in the past. But after I met young Master Sun now, I noticed that I was wrong. Everyone in the world says that heroes make the times, yet in my opinion, it's the times that make heroes. When the geniuses of the previous generation stirred up a storm in the Jianghu, young Master Sun had no choice but to temporarily exercise forbearance due to the rules of the clan, and he didn't catch up to the wave of the Jianghu, causing him to be a step slower than others. But under these preconditions, young Master Sun was still able to rise against the trend and become the top 10 of the dragon rankings. How could it not be admirable? So in my opinion, young Master Sun doesn't live up to his reputation because the people of the Jianghu have underestimated you too much. Sun Zhongming instantly roared with laughter when he heard this. Not bad, not bad. Your Yi clan has actually produced a rare understanding person. But even though it's like this young master doesn't feel wronged. After all, the way the clan does things is like this, and stability is the most important. A lack of forbearance in small matters will spoil great plans. Compared to my clan, what is my reputation worth? Yi Zhao's words could be said to have hit the nail on the head. Sun Zhongming knew that his strength wasn't as good as Zhang Qingzhen, Zhong Xian, Fang Qi Xiao, and Chu Xiu. But when they were making a name for themselves in the Jianghu, participating in the righteous and demonic battles on Floating Jade Mountain, participating in the fight in Xiaofang Heaven, and experiencing all sorts of opportunities, where was he? He was forced by the clan to not get involved in those messy matters and to cultivate within the clan. Hence, Sun Zhongming had always felt that if not for the clan's orders, he could also be on par with Chu Xiu and the others. But it was a pity that there were no ifs in this world. Anyway, in the eyes of most people, Sun Zhongming's generation of Dragon Tiger rankings couldn't be compared to the previous generation at all. Now that Yi Xiao had spoken the thoughts in his heart, this caused Sun Zhongming to be extremely complacent, and he looked at Yi Xiao even more favorably. At the very least, these words Yi Xiao spoke coupled with his attitude that was neither servile nor overbearing seemed like the truth, and it wasn't the disgusting flattery of Yi Ting and the others. Alright, all of you don't stand here, go in and wait for the birthday banquet to begin. As he spoke, Sun Zhongming even personally pulled Yi Xiao into the hall, and this sort of treatment caused Yi Ting and the others to be dumbstruck. At the same time, they felt deep envy. After all, even their Yi clan's patriarch, Yi Kun, didn't receive such treatment. Chapter 843. It was not easy for Sun Zhongming to find a soulmate. His attitude towards Yi Xiao was quite good, which made the others jealous. However, at this moment, another group of martial artists walked in. This group was from the Gao Ping Lu clan. The Gao Ping Lu clan had a good relationship with the Sun clan. However, for some reason, when the people from both sides greeted each other, there seemed to be some conflict between them. Especially at this moment, a young man in a blue warrior suit with two long spears with thunder patterns on his back saw Sun Zhongming. He walked over and greeted, "Brother Sun, long time no see. I heard that you've been having a good time in the clan recently." "That won't do. As a martial artist, you need to experience the pugilistic world to grow. Recently, I've been ranked 9th on the Longhu leaderboard, just above Brother Sunday. Brother Sun, you have to work hard." "Who's this guy?" Chu Xiu asked Yi Xiao telepathically. At Chu Xiu's level, he only paid attention to the people on the leaderboard. The Longhu leaderboard no longer had much to do with him. Therefore, Chu Xiu really did not know the new people on the Longhu leaderboard. However, young martial artists like Yi Xiao knew the people on the Longhu leaderboard like the back of their hands. Hearing this, he answered, "He's the most outstanding disciple of the Gao Ping Lu clan's younger generation, Thunder Dual Spears Lu Guangling. He's been very famous in the pugilistic world for the past 2 years. He's now ranked 9th on the Longhu leaderboard." Chu Xiu nodded, then shook his head slightly. This generation of youngsters was really disappointing. It should be said that there weren't many of them who could achieve greatness. For example, among the martial artists on the Longhu leaderboard in Chu Xiu's generation, other than Yi Tianxia who was more interested in fame and wealth, the others actually did not care much about the so-called Longhu leaderboard. "If you ranked me first, that's what I'm capable of. If you ranked me last, that's what I'm capable of." Status and reputation were earned through fighting, not by being ranked. For example, Lu Guangling was pleased with himself for being ranked 9th. Chu Xiu's generation of martial artists who were in the top 10 of the Longhu list did not have this kind of conduct. Even if it was Yi Tianxia, although he valued fame and ranking, his target was still Zhang Qingzhen or Chu Xiu, unlike Lu Guangling, who was so happy just because he was ranked 9th. By the way, the Sun family of River East should have a good relationship with the Lu family of Gao Ping. They seem to be in-laws. Why did they fall out with each other now? Yi Xiao thought about it and said, I'm not too sure about the specifics, but there's a rumor in the pugilistic world that they fell out because of an item that was brought out of the illusory realm half a year ago. It seemed to be a cultivation technique that was split into two because the Sun family's ancestor and the Lu family's ancestor fought over it. Over the past 6 months, the two families have had many discussions on how to resolve this matter, but it seems like they haven't come to an agreement, so the relationship between the two families has worsened. Chu Xiu nodded his head with a strange look in his eyes. The Sun family and the Gao family fell out? This was good news for him. There were more things that he could make use of. At this time, Sun Zhongming and Lu Guangling were already at each other's throats. One said that the other only relied on a few thieves to get to the top and that the Longhu list had fallen. The other said that the other was as timid as a mouse and only knew how to hide at home. As expected of the Sun family of River East. Seeing that the tension between the two was getting stronger and stronger, an elder of the Sun family immediately came to pull them apart. Today was the ancestor's birthday. Fighting at this time would not only bring shame to the Lu family, but also to themselves. After Lu Guangling left, Sun Zhongming said coldly, the Lu family of Gao Ping has long lost the glory of their ancestors. How dare you bark in front of me now? Do you think you're so great after killing a few thieves? At this time, Sun Zhongming suddenly turned to Yi Xiao and asked, what do you think of Lu Guangling? He's ranked above me on the Longhu list. Is he really stronger than me? Yi Xiao was stunned. Chu Xiu immediately spoke a long string of words in his mind, and then Yi Xiao paused for a moment before he said, I don't know much about the Lu family of Gao Ping, so I don't dare speak rashly. But the Wind Pavilion still has its reputation. Since it ranked Lu Guangling above Young Master, then it indicates that Lu Guangling is indeed stronger than Young Master Sun in the Wind Pavilion. When they heard this, Yi Ting and the other members of the Yi clan wished for nothing more than to strangle Yi Xiao to death. Not going along with Sun Zhongming's words at a time like this, are you trying to kill the Yi clan? Meanwhile, Sun Zhongming's expression sank slightly, but Yi Xiao changed the topic. But the rankings of the Wind Pavilion are absolutely accurate. The Wind Pavilion isn't ranked according to strength, and it's ranked according to accomplishments. Young Master Sun, you might not be inferior to Lu Guangling, and you just don't have any accomplishments that surpass Lu Guangling for now. It seems to me that Lu Guangling's character is slightly too arrogant, and he'll surely suffer a loss in the future. Conversely, Young Master Sun, you're enduring and laying low while accumulating strength, and you'll surely soar into the sky in the future. The gains and losses of one day aren't important, and the outcome will be known in the future. Sun Zhongming instantly roared with laughter when he heard this, and then he patted Yi Xiao on the shoulder and said, not bad, not bad. This young master truly never imagined that such a genius like you would actually appear in the Yi clan, and you're able to see things very clearly. Right, you said earlier that you're from a branch family of the Yi clan? Yi Xiao nodded and said, yes. Sun Zhongming shook his head lightly and felt slightly regretful. There were rather few people that were to his liking, and if Yi Xiao was a direct descendant of the Yi clan, then he could even support Yi Xiao to the position of patriarch. But unfortunately, Yi Xiao was from a branch family, and in this way, he couldn't go too far. Although the Yi family was a vassal of the Sun family, everything had to follow the rules. If he forcibly intervened in the affairs of other families, it would cause dissatisfaction from other vassal families of the Sun family, which was not worth the loss. At this moment, Sun Zhongming suddenly saw a person coming in from the door. His eyes suddenly lit up, and he waved to Yi Xiao and others, "You guys go in first, I still have other things to do." With that said, Sun Zhongming ran directly to the door. Chu Xiu looked at the door, and the person who came in turned out to be Luo Feiheng, which made him taken aback. Why would Luo Feiheng take the initiative to come to the Sun family? After not seeing for half a year, Luo Feiheng's aura had condensed to the extreme. Obviously, she was only one step away from the real pellet state. She was still carrying her blood spear red kite. Although she was still beautiful, she carried a murderous aura that made others subconsciously afraid to approach her. With a smile on his face, Sun Zhongming walked over and said, "Miss Feiheng, welcome to my Sun family. Come on, I will take you in personally." With that said, Sun Zhongming wanted to pull Luo Feiheng. But at this moment, the red kite in Luo Feiheng's hand paused, and the sharp edge crossed in front of Sun Zhongming. She said coldly, "Sun Zhongming, do you think you have me for sure?" Using weapons on someone's birthday was a very unlucky thing. Everyone's eyes suddenly looked over. The smile on Sun Zhongming's face gradually disappeared. "Luo Feiheng, don't be so shameless. Marrying me is not a disgrace to you. Your 9-branch hall will be merged into the Sun family of Jiangdong, and you can also get better development." Luo Feiheng sneered, "Relying on suppressing 9-branch hall to make me submit, Sun Zhongming, you are still so shameless. If Chu Xiu was still here, would you dare to suppress 9-branch hall? You wouldn't even dare to think about it. Bowing and scraping in front of others, but baring your teeth behind others. Sun Zhongming, you really are a dog, but your dog's guts are not all-encompassing. Instead, you are very small." Luo Feiheng's face turned red and white as she scolded Sun Zhongming. Everyone present was also discussing it. Currently, Luo Feiheng was ranked second on the Longhu leaderboard. In addition, although the 9-branch hall under her was not considered a big power in Eastern Qi, it was not small either. In fact, it was even bigger than the Luo family of Wu County where Luo Feiheng came from. Therefore, she was still very famous in Eastern Qi. Sun Zhongming relied on suppressing 9-branch hall to force Luo Feiheng to marry him. He wanted to gain both power and power. Many people knew this, and they were somewhat disdainful of Sun Zhongming's methods. If he used this method to deal with others, it would be called ruthless. However, if he used it to deal with a woman, it would be called despicable. Therefore, many people disliked Sun Zhongming. Looking at Luo Feiheng, Sun Zhongming sneered and said, "You still dare to be arrogant at this point? In the past, you relied on Chu Xiu's power. However, now that Chu Xiu is dead, there is not even a trace of him left. Without Chu Xiu's backing, you still dare to be so arrogant in front of the Sun family. Who gave you the guts? I wonder if the guts I gave you are enough." Along with the voice, a dignified middle-aged man in a white scholar's robe stepped into the Sun family's main gate. Seeing this person, everyone present greeted him or bowed to him. "Greetings, Lord Shao. Dean Shao, how have you been? I haven't seen you for many years." Chancellor Shao is still as elegant as before. This middle-aged man was Shao Baiyu, the Grand Chancellor of the Jixia Martial Arts Academy in Eastern Qi. More than half of the martial artists from the Eastern Qi imperial court, especially the younger generation and the backbone generation, called him teacher or dean. Moreover, there were many martial artists from the Jixia Martial Arts Academy in Jianghu, who were extremely respectful to him. When Shao Baiyu served as the Grand Chancellor, he did not reserve anything from the disciples of the Jixia Martial Arts Academy. He taught them everything he knew, as long as they could understand. Seeing Shao Baiyu, Sun Zhongming's face suddenly became gloomy. At this time, he suddenly remembered that Luo Feiheng was not only from the Luo family of Wujuan, but also a good friend of Chu Xiu. She was also Shao Baiyu's disciple and the most outstanding one among the martial artists from the Jixia Martial Arts Academy. However, Shao Baiyu had so many disciples that even Shao Baiyu himself couldn't count them all. If Xiao Baiyu took care of so many people, he really couldn't manage them all. Moreover, Xiao Baiyu used to be a member of the imperial court. If he intervened in the affairs of Jianghu without authorization, his identity would be a little awkward, and the Eastern Qi imperial court would not like it. Therefore, even when Luo Feiheng betrayed the Luo family, he did not intervene too much. But now Xiao Baiyu had stepped into the spiritual cultivation realm with real fire, and his identity was very different from before. He also had more right to speak and status in the Eastern Qi imperial court. At this time, he publicly stood up to support Luo Feiheng, which also gave him more confidence. Chapter 844. Xiao Baiyu's strength in the true fire realm and his identity as the Chancellor of Jixia Academy, no one dared to look down on him. The old ancestor of the Sun family, Sun Zuchang, even came in person when he heard the words, and his attitude was extremely polite. Why didn't Brother Xiao tell me in advance this time? Please forgive me for not welcoming you earlier. Xiao Baiyu smiled and said, in fact, I came here mainly to ask Brother Sun for one thing. Please let Feihong go this time. Feihong is my disciple. She has experienced many ups and downs, and everyone in Jianghu knows this. After so many years, Feihong finally has some foundation and family business in Jianghu. It's not easy. I believe that the Sun family of Jiangdong will not be interested in the little family business of Jiufen Hall, so it's better to give me face and let this matter go. What do you think? Sun Zuchang's face was a little ugly. He knew what Sun Zhongming had done, but he didn't care about it. In an aristocratic family, reputation was secondary. The most important thing was to get the benefits. That was why he fell out with the Lu family for half a cultivation method. But now Xiao Baiyu said these things in person in front of so many people, which was a bit embarrassing for the Sun family, and also a kind of coercion. But after Sun Zuchang thought about it, he still reluctantly smiled and said, since Chancellor Xiao has said so, our Sun family will naturally not force you. Since they had already fallen out, Sun Zuchang didn't bother to be polite, and even didn't call him Brother Xiao. After all, in terms of seniority, he was one generation older than Xiao Baiyu. This matter was not a big deal, and he was not necessarily afraid of Xiao Baiyu, who had just stepped into the true fire realm. But what he really feared was the Eastern Qi imperial court, which was a giant. Moreover, Xiao Baiyu had many disciples in Jianghu, and he had a deep foundation in the Eastern Qi imperial court, so he was not easy to deal with. Turning his eyes to Sun Zhongming, Sun Zuchang snorted and said, useless thing, you even use force to chase a woman. You really bring shame to our Sun family. Don't harass Miss Luo in the future, do you hear me? Since his old ancestor had said so, Sun Zhongming had to say sullenly, got it. After the farce ended, everyone tried to smooth things over and the birthday banquet continued. The so-called birthday banquet held by the Sun family was actually a show of strength, so there was no meaning to it. Everyone was eating and drinking. At the same time, the Sun family also intended to tell everyone present that although our Sun family lost 2 real pellet state martial artists, we still have a foundation. Those who have evil intentions, just put them away. In short, that was the meaning, so the atmosphere was quite harmonious for a while. At this moment, Luo Feiheng stood up and left. He was probably going to the toilet. Chu Xiu suddenly said to Yi Xiao, follow Luo Feiheng. Do you have any 9 dragon coins on you? Make an opening according to the position I said. Yi Xiao didn't know what Chu Xiu wanted to do, but she still did it obediently. At this moment, when Yi Ting saw Yi Xiao stand up, he couldn't help but grunt coldly. Yi Xiao, where are you going? Yi Xiao utterly paid no attention to him and directly turned around to leave, and this instantly angered Yi Ting to the point his brows twitched. Since Yi Xiao defeated his subordinate in public that day, he noticed that Yi Xiao was looking down on him more and more. Especially when Yi Xiao was actually chatting happily with Sun Zhongming earlier, this caused him to simply be jealous to the extreme. Because before he came here, he was still fantasizing that if he were to form a good relationship with Sun Zhongming, then he would be able to obtain the support of the Sun clan. In that way, he might even be able to surpass his older brother and become the Sun clan's patriarch. In the end, who would have imagined that the person chatting happily with Sun Zhongming was Yi Xiao? On what basis? Even though Yi Ting felt it was unfair in his heart, he didn't dare go too far in the Sun clan, and he could only watch as Yi Xiao left. Yi Xiao followed Luo Feiheng to the rear courtyard of the Sun clan. Luo Feiheng turned around abruptly, and her beautiful brows knit together as she said coldly, "Kid, why are you following me?" As he looked at Luo Feiheng, who was exceedingly heroic yet still beautiful and moving before him, Yi Xiao's face suddenly went red, and he actually started stammering and was unable to speak. Even though he was from a branch family of the Yi clan, his status was actually inferior to even a servant. So since he was young, even a maidservant had never looked him in the eye. When had he ever spoken to a peerless beauty like Luo Feiheng? So at this moment, he was even more nervous than when he saw Chu Xiu after he was sucked into the blood soul pearl. When he saw Yi Xiao's expression, Lu Jianghu was amused to the point of roaring with laughter, whereas, Chu Xiu slapped himself on the head instead. This kid is too useless. He probably hasn't even touched a woman now and is still a virgin, right? He's actually nervous to the point of being like this. Give the 9-dragon coin in your possession to Luo Feiheng. Yi Xiao took out the 9-dragon coin with a red face. When Luo Feiheng saw the 9-dragon coin, she was immediately startled. She pulled Yi Xiao to a corner and stared at him. "Where did you get this thing from?" When Chu Xiu first suggested the establishment of the 9-branch hall as a joke, in the end, even Chu Xiu himself didn't really care about it. Only Luo Feiheng took it seriously. Because everyone in the 9-branch hall was familiar with each other, when others like Xie Xiaolu and the others sent her a message, they actually didn't need to use the 9-dragon coin. However, when Yi Xiao suddenly took out such an item, Luo Feiheng couldn't help but have a bold guess. This made her a little excited. At this moment, Yi Xiao was also a little excited. After all, since he was young, other than his mother who died early, he had never been so close to another woman, especially a beauty like Luo Feiheng. So he was a little nervous to the point that he couldn't speak. Chu Xiu could only say, "Give her the blood soul bead as well." Yi Xiao handed the blood soul bead to Luo Feiheng with a red face. Holding the blood soul bead, Luo Feiheng looked at Yi Xiao suspiciously, then his spiritual force was pulled into the blood soul bead's space. This time, Chu Xiu didn't cover his face. When Luo Feiheng saw Chu Xiu, she immediately shouted, "I knew it. A scourge lives for 1,000 years. You, Chu Xiu, won't die so easily." When she first heard that Chu Xiu died together with the old monk of the Sabodi monastery, Luo Feiheng's first reaction was disbelief. There must be something fishy going on. Chu Xiu was an incomparably cunning person. After experiencing so many life and death situations, how could he die in the hands of an old monk? Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, "You have seen my current appearance. Only my primordial spirit and a trace of origin remain. It's almost the same as death. The situation this time is really dangerous. The old monk from the Sabodi monastery is too strong, and he even has a top-grade divine weapon. In addition to that sealed space, all schemes are useless. We can only face it head-on." The fact that he and Jingchan Jizang perished together actually had a scale in the hearts of the people in the pugilistic world. Although most of them thought that Chu Xiu was better at scheming, they had to admit that Chu Xiu's strength was already considered the top existence in the real pellet state, let alone among the younger generation. With the old monk Jingchan Jizang's desperate stance, not to mention Chu Xiu, even if it was other real fire spirit refinement state powerhouses on the list, as long as they were not in the top 10, they might be killed by him. After calming down, Luo Feiheng asked, "What are you going to do now?" Do you need me to inform others for you? Also, who is the uncle tied to the pillar over there? After being trapped here for half a year, you have fallen in love with this kind of thing now? Although Lu Jiang he didn't know what Luo Feiheng meant by this kind of thing, his intuition told him that it wasn't something good. Lu Jiang he said with a black face, hey, little girl, be polite to me. I used to roam the Jianghu. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Chu Xiu with a wave of his hand. Stop it, only you know my current situation. Don't tell others yet. Luo Feiheng said curiously, why? Isn't it good to let Senior Wei Shuya of the Yinma clan help you rebuild your body? Chu Xiu shook his head. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he said, the more people there are, the better. The fewer people who know that I'm still alive, the better. The hidden devil lineage doesn't belong to Senior Wei alone. This time, I'm going to play big, so I don't have to trouble Senior Wei for the time being. It's fine that the old monk of Sabodi Monastery made a move, but since others threw stones at me when I was down, it's time for me to throw stones back at them one by one, and smash their heads until they bleed. Luo Feiheng was very familiar with this expression of Chu Xiu. Once Chu Xiu started to plot against someone, he would have this sinister look. However, Luo Feiheng was very excited, and she quickly asked, then what can I do? Chu Xiu said, when I need your help, I'll send someone to inform you. I haven't started setting up the plan yet, so I'll find some time to slowly play around. Furthermore, this concerns my reconstruction of my body. If I don't earn back half a year's time this time, won't I lose a lot? Luo Feiheng nodded. Anyway, Chu Xiu was the best at using his brain to plot against people. She was responsible for doing it. By the way, in this half a year, did anything happen to my forces and the Yinma clan? Yi Shao didn't know this before, and Chu Xiu didn't ask much about it. Now, Luo Feiheng should know something. Luo Feiheng said, after you died, Senior Wei Shuya asked Yi Shaonan of the moon-worshipping cult to stop the divine monk Rama in a rage. He led the Yinma clan to find trouble with Sabodi Monastery. However, Sabodi Monastery was too strong. Even without divine monk Rama, the Yinma clan couldn't shake them. They just caused some trouble for them, and they encountered great pressure. The other big shots of the Yinma clan wanted to retreat, and Yi Shaonan also left, so the matter was left unsettled. Chu Xiu nodded slightly. For Wei Shuya to do this for him, it was extremely benevolent. He wasn't Wei Shuya's disciple, but in fact, Wei Shuya treated him better than his own personal disciple. Moreover, in the entire Yinma clan, only Wei Shuya considered the interests of the entire Yinma clan. This old man had done enough for Chu Xiu. This time, Chu Xiu already had a general plan for the body reconstruction, a plan to announce his official return. Chapter 845. In fact, Chu Xiu was not too worried about his subordinates. One was that it was useless to worry. For half a year, Chu Xiu was trapped in the blood soul bead. If anything happened, it had already happened. Also, Chu Xiu believed in his subordinates. They were not mediocre people. Chu Xiu was not arrogant enough to think that without him, his subordinates would immediately fall apart. The Jianghu would continue to revolve even if no one was around. Sure enough, Luo Feiheng said, your subordinates didn't suffer too much loss. When you were still there, although you didn't guard the Guanzhong torture room, Guanzhong torture room had its own foundation. Other people also knew that Guanzhong torture room was under your protection, so no one dared to attack. But as the news of your rebirth spread, there were some unranked forces eyeing the Guanzhong torture hall. Once they succeeded, there would be endless trouble in the future. So Brother Lu took his 4 subordinates to guard the Guanzhong torture room. After killing some people, they had stabilized the Guanzhong torture room. There was also the Jianghu Hall. Originally, the imperial court wanted to annex the Jianghu Hall directly. First, they let a person named Daoist Wuyang take action, but the other party refused. Later, Wei Shiya personally came to the Northern Yen Imperial Court. I don't know what he said, but the Northern Yen Imperial Court gave up. After that, the Northern Yen martial arts began to be restless again. Mei Qinglian and Pang Hu joined forces to barely suppress it. But speaking of which, Tang Ya and Yen Bugui, the two subordinates you accepted, are also talents. They actually stepped into the real pellet state in this kind of adversity and became a martial arts grand master. And the two of them were also ruthless enough, so they deterred a group of people, temporarily stabilizing the Northern Yen martial arts. Hearing Luo Feiheng's words, Chu Xiu was also relieved. Among his subordinates, Chu Xiu was most optimistic about Tang Ya and Yen Bugui. One was talented and perceptive, while the other was stubborn to the extreme. If he wasn't a madman, then he was a genius. Now, it seemed that the two of them did not let him down. Chu Xiu didn't talk to Luo Feiheng for too long. After all, this was still the Sun family. After asking Luo Feiheng to return the Blood Soul Pearl to Yi Shao, the two of them parted ways and left. The Sun family's patriarch's birthday celebration ended very quickly. In fact, there wasn't much to say. After showing his presence and receiving a wave of gifts, the birthday celebration was over. Sun Zhongming found Yi Shao to be really pleasing to the eye, and he actually gave Yi Shao a treasure artifact short saber, causing Yi Ting to be extremely envious. On the way back, they passed by a dilapidated temple. The elder of the Yi family saw that the sky was already dark, so he asked his men to temporarily put down their luggage and rest here. When they went to River East this time, they also bought some special products from River East and brought them back to the Ji state to sell. The Yi clan was a small clan with a small business, and they wouldn't give up any tiny chance to earn money. Since they left the Sun clan, Yi Shao seemed to have been isolated. All along the way, Yi Ting had been intentionally looking for trouble with him, whereas, that elder of the Yi clan didn't stop him. They were afraid of causing trouble when they went there, so that elder of the Yi clan could be considered to have a good view of the overall situation and didn't allow them to cause trouble on the way. The most important thing was to celebrate the Sun clan's birthday celebration. But now that the matter had already been dealt with, he knew that Yi Ting was furious in his heart, so he would allow Yi Ting to vent it. One was the Yi clan's second young master, the other was a branch family disciple that wasn't heavily injured. Even an idiot knew how to choose. Yi Ting looked at Yi Shao, who sat at the corner, and grunted coldly. "Yi Shao, go get some water." Yi Shao frowned and said, "We're on the mountain, where's the water from? Is the water in the group not enough? I asked you to go, so go. Cut the crap." Yi Ting suddenly flared up and directly smashed the bowl of soup in his hand at Yi Shao. Even though the latter dodged it, Yi Shao was splashed by the hot soup within the bowl. Everyone present went silent. They knew that Yi Ting was intentionally looking for trouble, so no one cared. Conversely, many people were watching as if they were watching a show, and that Yi clan elder was like this as well. Yi Shao stood up abruptly and glared angrily at Yi Ting. But right at this moment, Chu Xiu's voice suddenly sounded out in his mind. "Kill him." Yi Shao shook abruptly, and he replied with disbelief in his mind. "What did you say? Kill him?" Even though Yi Shao had been bullied and humiliated by Yi Ting for such a long time, truthfully speaking, the thought of killing someone had never appeared in his mind. After all, he was a member of the Yi clan. Even though he was a branch family disciple, the same blood flowed within him as Yi Ting. In the end, Chu Xiu asked him to kill someone, and this caused Yi Shao to be slightly unable to accept it. Moreover, he hadn't killed anyone before. Of course you have to kill someone. He already hates you to the bone. If you don't kill him now, have you thought about the trouble you'll face in the future? Only all of you are present in this desolate mountain range. Destroy the corpses after killing him and casually push the blame onto bandits, and there'll absolutely not be the slightest flaw. Such a good opportunity is on your side at the right time, so what are you waiting for if you don't kill him? But, There are no buts. Think about the humiliation you've suffered during these past few years. You took them to be members of the same clan, yet they only took you to be a dog. More precisely speaking, you're even inferior to a dog. Chu Xiu's words seemed to carry magic that stimulated the killing intent in Yi Zhao's heart, causing his eyes to gradually turn red as he walked slowly towards Yi Ting. Within the blood soul pearl, Lu Jiang he clicked his tongue and sighed. Kid, is it really good for you to do this? You actually used your spiritual force to stimulate the killing intent in his heart. Kid, you're a bit too cruel. They're your clansmen after all, and this kid has probably never even seen blood, yet you asked him to slaughter his own clansmen. You're inhumane. Chu Xiu glanced at Lu Jianghe and said indifferently, I annihilated my entire clan with my own 2 hands when I was at his age. Lu Jianghe instantly went silent. He wouldn't suspect that Chu Xiu was deceiving him, as this person before him was simply frenzied and inhumane. At this moment, in the outside world, Yi Ting couldn't help but sneer when he saw Yi Xiao walking over towards him while revealing a ruthless expression. What? Could it be that you want to make a move against me? This young master took into account the overall situation within the Sun clan and didn't flare up. Do you really think I've given you face? You have to remember. Yi Ting hadn't finished speaking when a light swish resounded out, and the sword in Yi Zhao's hand had suddenly left its sheath and stabbed into Yi Ting's body. Blood flowed out from Yi Ting's mouth as he looked at Yi Xiao who stood before him, and his expression was filled with disbelief. He killed me? He actually dared to kill me. Yi Ting wanted to raise his hand, yet in the next moment, his vitality had already dispersed, and his corpse fell straight to the ground. Yi Xiao looked at the sword in his hand that was tainted with blood, and his eyes revealed a slightly perplexed expression. This is the feeling of killing someone? He'd killed someone, and the person he killed for the first time was a fellow clansman. He didn't feel uncomfortable or disgusted, and it was even to the extent that he felt slightly comfortable in his heart. As he looked at the fellow that humiliated him lying on the ground, his hand that held the sword was still trembling slightly, and it wasn't from fear but excitement. Within the blood soul pearl, Lu Jiang he said with surprise, oh my, this kid's performance isn't bad. He's able to be so composed even though it's his first time killing someone. Earlier, Lu Jiang he was rather dissatisfied with Chu Xiu's choice of Yi Xiao, and he felt that Yi Xiao was too weak and possessed weak strength and natural talent. But now it would seem that with this kid's disposition, Yi Xiao possessed the potential to walk the path of devils. Chu Xiu said indifferently, I've always firmly believed that human nature is evil by nature. Some people have suppressed it for too long, and they've hidden their evil thoughts at the bottom of their hearts, yet it would allow it to grow stronger and stronger. Yi Xiao is capable of enduring to such an extent for the sake of his crippled father that's about to die, and he can be considered to be an extremely filial person. But the more he's like this, the stronger the evil thoughts in his heart are. There's a devil in every single person's heart, and what I'm doing now is only letting him out. At this moment, everyone in the outside world was stunned for a short moment before seeming to have finally recovered from their shock, and they started crying out loudly. No matter what, they didn't dare believe that this Yi Xiao who'd always been incomparably useless and allowed them to bully him would actually counterattack. Moreover, he killed Yi Ting as soon as he arrived, the second young master of our Yi clan. Has he gone mad? The sharp cries of these people jolted Yi Xiao back to his senses at the same time. As he looked at the sword in his hand that was tainted with blood, a cold light bloomed in his eyes as he charged towards the others. When it came to killing, it was easy to get used to it the second time, and once he killed a person, the rest would be easy. With the cultivation technique Chu Xiu gave him, even though Yi Xiao was still at the blood condensation realm now, he was obviously not on the same level as the others, and it was simply a one-sided slaughter. That Yi clan's senior shouted out furiously. Bastard! How audacious of you! As a senior, he'd protected and escorted these juniors, yet now, it had caused the death of the second young master. This caused the Yi clan's senior to be able to imagine what sort of punishment he would suffer once he returned to the Yi clan. It was even to the extent that he was regretting at this moment. Why didn't I stop Yi Ting when he humiliated Yi Xiao earlier? If I stopped Yi Xiao, then perhaps Yi Xiao wouldn't have gone mad to the point of killing him. The Yi clan's breezy fallen leaf sword was agile and sharp. At this moment, when the Yi clan's senior executed it, sword lights shot out horizontally and vertically, and it was extremely gorgeous. His opponent was at the congenital realm, and even if Yi Xiao possessed the boost of his cultivation technique, his strength was inferior to his opponent. So he fell into a disadvantageous position after a few moves. Right when the Yi clan's senior intended to follow up his victorious attack and completely capture Yi Xiao suddenly withdrew his sword and approached him. A sharp blade light flashed in his left hand like an azure dragon emerging from the sea, and it caused others to be unable to react to it. After the cold light passed, the Yi clan's senior stood on the spot as he held onto his neck that had fresh blood spraying out, and he looked at the short blade in Yi Xiao's hand with an expression of disbelief. My Yi clan uses the sword, yet who exactly taught this terrifying blade technique of Yi Xiao's? This Yi clan's senior already didn't have the time to ponder deeply, and in the next moment, his corpse fell to the ground. Yi Xiao turned around, and the eyes of the other Yi clan disciples revealed boundless terror as they fled in all directions. Even a Yi clan senior at the congenital realm had died, so how would they go against Yi Xiao? But at this moment, Yi Xiao's eyes had already gone red from the slaughter behind them, and there was only a single thought in his heart: kill. Chapter 846. This was the first time Yi Xiao had killed someone. In Chu Xiu's eyes, this was just passable. The main reason was that he had been in a daze too many times when he was fighting. If not for the fact that his opponents were too weak, he might have been injured. After killing everyone, Yi Xiao was almost exhausted. He sat on the ground, looking at his blood-stained hands and the corpses inside and outside the temple. He was in a daze, as if he couldn't believe that he had done all this. Chu Xiu said calmly, "All right, don't be in a daze. There's still one last step. Kill, set fire, and destroy the corpses. However, before destroying the corpses, use the great demonic blood technique to absorb the blood qi from the corpses. This blood qi should be enough for you to step into the innate realm. Store the rest in your body for future cultivation. To outsiders, you can say that you broke through when you were being chased." Yi Xiao's mouth twitched. He was just following Chu Xiu's instructions. After absorbing the blood qi with the great demonic blood technique, he destroyed all the corpses and the entire temple. At this time, inside the blood soul pearl, Lu Jiang he asked doubtfully, "You gave the blood qi to that kid. Aren't you going to use it for yourself?" Chu Xiu said calmly, "These pieces of trash haven't even reached the unity of heaven and man realm. Even if I take their blood qi, what can I do?" Lu Jiang he shook his head and said, "At this time, you shouldn't be so picky. The great demonic blood technique focuses on accumulating the blood qi. First, you can slowly condense a body. Then, you can think of a way to use this body to replenish your blood qi. Finally, you can slowly return to your peak. But how long will that take? I've already been delayed for half a year. I don't have time to play with them. I said that this time, if I want to do it, I'll do it big. That's the way you use the great demonic blood technique to reconstruct your body. It's not what I want to use. What I need is not to repair and restore to my peak. Instead, I need to destroy and rebuild, to become stronger." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Lu Jiang he revealed a trace of suspicion. He naturally knew how much blood qi was required to reconstruct his body to its peak, and so did Chu Xiu. If he didn't accumulate it bit by bit, how could he get so much blood qi? He didn't even have a physical body, yet he still planned to destroy his entire family. However, Chu Xiu did not tell him the plan. This time, Lu Jianghe did not ask too much. Just as Yi Xiao was about to leave, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Stab yourself twice." Yi Xiao was suddenly stunned. "What? What?" Chu Xiu Xiao said. Yi Xiao snorted. Chu Xiu blood. Yu Xiu Yu's clans Yu Yi clan members Yu. Moreover, it's possible that you didn't die after encountering bandits. But if you don't even have the slightest injury, then it would be too fake. Don't take the members of the Yi clan to be idiots. Yi Xiao gritted his teeth and was really ruthless. He directly stabbed his abdomen twice, and it almost penetrated his body, causing a large amount of fresh blood to spray out instantly. One of the stabs was even close to a vital point. If it wasn't for the great demonic blood technique being able to control the flow of blood qi and prevent Yi Xiao from losing too much blood to death, he might not even be able to return to the Yi clan alive. A few days later, Yi Xiao, whose aura was low to the limit and seemed to be on the verge of death, barely managed to crawl to the entrance of the Yi clan, yet he didn't say a single word before fainting. This time, he wasn't faking it, and he really fainted. There was a group of people when he left, yet only a half-dead person remained when he returned. The entire Yi clan was instantly in an uproar, and they started to treat Yi Xiao in a flurry. After Yi Xiao was saved, Yi Kun and the other members of the Yi clan surrounded him and asked hurriedly, "Where's Yi Ting? Where's the other members of the Yi clan? What exactly happened?" When he heard Yi Kun and the others ask this, Yi Xiao couldn't help but feel slightly disappointed. He was still heavily injured now, yet the patriarch and the others didn't ask him a single thing in the end, and they only cared about Yi Ting's safety. Of course, Yi Xiao knew his status in the clan now, and he gritted his teeth and said, "It was bandits. When we returned from the River East, we purchased some specialty products from the River East, and it was precisely because of this that we were targeted by bandits. The others were killed by the bandits, and only I escaped with my life." Truthfully speaking, as far as Chu Xiu was concerned, Yi Xiao's acting skills were too inferior, and his emotions weren't on point and weren't realistic. At the very least, it was far inferior to him. When encountering a situation like this, Yi Xiao ought to reveal a form of fear that had a lingering fear in his heart, a form of pain that he couldn't bear to recall the scene from that day, and a trace of sorrow that was just right. Only then would it be perfect. But now, his display was too composed, and his emotions were slightly flat. But because Yi Xiao had such a stubborn and stiff appearance in the Yi clan, no one doubted it at this moment. When Yi Kun heard that his second son had actually died at the hands of bandits, his figure swayed and he almost fell. The eldest, Yi Ling, hurriedly supported his father. In his eyes, there was a trace of joy mixed with sorrow. His second brother had always been restless and always wanted to replace his position. Now, he finally had no chance. "Which group of bandits are they from? Our Yi clan will fight them to the death." Yi Kun roared loudly. Yi Xiao shook his head and said, "I don't know. This is the first time I've left the Yi clan. I can't even identify the surrounding forces, let alone recognize those bandits." Everyone present nodded. That group of bandits did not always stay in the same place, so it was normal that Yi Xiao couldn't recognize them. Right at this moment, Yi Ling suddenly asked, "Second brother is dead, and seventh uncle, who was experienced and prudent, is also dead. Then how did you escape?" Hearing Yi Ling's words, the others finally realized that something was amiss. As the second young master of the Yi clan, Yi Ting had already reached the Khanate realm. He also had some life-saving techniques. The elder who led the Yi clan was the seventh son of the collateral branch. He also had Khanate realm cultivation and was very experienced. In the end, he had also died. If anyone could escape, it should have been these two. How could Yi Xiao have a chance? Yi Xiao coughed and took out the dagger that Sun Zhongming had given him. He said, "When I was in the Sun clan, I had a pleasant conversation with the eldest young master of the Sun clan, Sun Zhongming. That was why young Master Sun gave me this precious weapon. Those bandits did not expect a small fry like me to have a precious weapon. In their carelessness, I broke their weapons and charged out. In the midst of the chase, I broke through to the Khanate realm and was able to escape. Yi Kun held the dagger in Yi Zhao's hand. The hilt of the dagger was indeed engraved with the Sun Clan's seal. This was a weapon forged by the Sun Clan. Previously, Yi Zhao had been unconscious. Now that he had woken up, no one had paid attention to his strength. Now that he had mentioned it, everyone realized that Yi Zhao had also reached the Khanate realm. This was a surprise. In a small clan like the Yi clan, those who could step into the Khanate realm in their 20s were all nurtured by the clan. Now that Yi Zhao had stepped over this threshold without relying on the clan's power, it could be said that fortune and misfortune were interdependent. Yi Kun held the dagger and pondered for a moment before asking, "Are you really on good terms with Sun Zhongming, young Master Sun?" Yi Zhao smiled bitterly. How could I lie about this? Many people saw that scene. Clan leader can ask the other clans who attended the birthday banquet. Yi Kun thought about it and handed the dagger in his hand to Yi Zhao. He said, "Since young Master Sun thinks so highly of you, you have to perform well. The next time you see young Master Sun, don't embarrass him. From today onwards, you will be in charge of the business in the clan. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask the elders in the clan." Everyone was stunned. It seemed that no one had expected Yi Kun to hand over such an important authority to an outsider like Yi Zhao. Of course, many people understood that Yi Kun was aiming for Sun Zhongming. The successor of the Sun clan from River East had taken a fancy to someone from the Yi clan. This was a great thing, so of course, they had to make good use of it. Turning his head, Yi Kun said coldly, "Bring some people to the scene of the incident and see if you can find any clues. If I find out who did it, the Yi clan will not rest until they are dead." After everyone left, Yi Zhao heaved a sigh of relief. Just now, he had been on tenterhooks, afraid that once he was discovered, he would be hacked to death by the Yi clan. Don't be nervous. This kind of thing will be fine after you get used to it. It's always like this for the first time. Chu Xiu's voice sounded in Yi Zhao's mind. Yi Zhao's face turned pale. There's a second time? Chu Xiu said faintly, "You told a lie, so you have to use countless lies to make up for it. You killed one person, so naturally, you will have to kill countless people in the future to clear your path. Don't worry, it won't be too long." After saying that, Chu Xiu did not move. However, at that moment, Lu Jianghu chuckled and said, "I dare to bet that when you first killed someone and lied, you were much calmer than this lad." "How do you know?" "Because you are more shameless and black-hearted than this lad. It's a waste of talent for someone like you not to join the diabolism." Chu Xiu shook his head slightly. Actually, at the beginning, he had wanted to draw a clear line between himself and the diabolism. In the end, who would have thought that he would fall deeper and deeper into it? Over at the Yi clan, after Yi Zhao recovered from his injuries, his status in the Yi clan seemed to have undergone a huge change. His status was elevated to the level of a direct descendant, or rather, second only to the eldest young master Yi Ling. With the cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques that Chu Xiu had given him, in addition to the qi and blood that he had previously digested, Yi Zhao's cultivation level had improved by leaps and bounds. His career and strength had both soared, and he was respected and admired wherever he went. This feeling was simply like a dream to Yi Zhao. It was even to the extent that he was so happy that he almost forgot about Chu Xiu's existence. However, one night after a month, Chu Xiu suddenly said to Yi Zhao, "You should be prepared." "Prepared for what?" Yi Zhao looked confused. "Prepared to kill Yi Kun and his son, or to destroy the entire Yi clan." You're tuning into the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.